Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 813 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Russia is out here losing some tremendously big aircraft. Terrible for them. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we are going to be making sure to cover the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and a lot has been happening. Russian forces are surrendering in higher numbers in the area of the Kharkiv Oblast. The offensive is now beginning to clearly fail at this moment, and not only that, we are also getting major news out of Sevastopol that some of the rarest aircraft in service with the Russian air forces of today have been knocked out at Belbek airfield, which is insane to see. But nevertheless, it is unbelievable news from every single direction. And right before the stream went live, we also got reports out of the area of Novorossiysk that there's apparently been some major attacks in this direction as well, and those appear to be underway while we are live on air. We are going to be covering every single bit of this that we possibly can, and of course the major news of what's happening inside of Kharkiv, because the situation went from being somewhat questionable for Ukrainian forces to being an incredibly good one as of today. Even according to NATO analysts, or analysts, better so is the actual proper word, that were saying that Ukraine was doomed literally just about a few days ago. Looks like they were wrong again. But we're going to be making sure to go into everything that we've got, and really quickly, I do want to make sure to bounce around on some of the things that are happening right when the stream was going live. For example, in Novorossiysk, we were able to hear that explosions were reported near the harbor area, and this may possibly be a Ukrainian drone or much less likely a missile attack that is occurring on the port facilities. When you see anti-air fire above the skies in Novorossiysk. And that's the end of the clip.
It's like Novorossiysk might be getting hammered. They're getting pounded up there, I'm telling you.
Man, Putin and his men were up on their tiny post, and they were getting pounded. But beyond that, moving on from the area of Novorossiysk, we also got to hear that near the area of Krasnodar, 20 Russian conscripts are being held captive after they were deemed unfit for military service. They're not allowing them to leave. Instead, they're having to stay in Krasnodar as the military authorities try and find some way to press them into service. We see the argument here with Don Rossiya, who was right up here with the white mustache. He's like, no, we're not letting him go.
Why do all the Russian people always kind of look like they're related to Shoigu or something?
I don't know. like they do look like that.
Like Shoigu had a hand in creating, or literally from birth, the entire Russian military.
Dude, he is the stud. He is the stud.
He's been getting around.
Responsible for the creation of the Russian state. But we see here the argument continuing on. I'm not going to show you all this entire thing, but nevertheless, it is very interesting to see that the Russians are so desperate for manpower, they're taking people who are medically not even able to serve, and they're trying to hold them until they can find a way to push them into military service. Meanwhile, up in Moscow, or really just south of Moscow in the city of Tula, where one of the major arms factories is seen, we have heard that apparently Ukrainian drones have stricken the Basalt factory, which is a Russian defense manufacturer, inside of the Tula city area, and we were able to get the clip of that right here. Ooh. And we hear the slide whistle.
Exploded.
Raise the power. But beyond that, it appears that a major factory has been hit inside of the area of Tula just a few hours ago, and we are going to be trying to get more information on that as much as we possibly can. But at the moment, we don't have a lot, rather than there are explosions in Tula, and over the next few days, more information will begin to come out, and we will get a much better look at what happened in Tula and the kind of damage that was caused. Moving on from these little updates that we got just right before the stream ran of the attacks that are occurring inside of Russia, it is now time for us to move on down into the most active battlefield in Ukraine at the moment, and the one that is going the highest in Ukraine's favor, and that is the Kharkiv counteroffensive. So many of y'all have been hearing the horror stories from the Ukrainian, pro-Ukrainian journalists, and also a whole bunch of other people out there saying that this offensive is going to be the end of the end for Ukraine. This is it, and the Russians are going to push forward. They're going to take the city of Kharkiv, and they're going to begin to steamroll their way on towards Kyiv, and it's over for everyone. As of the past 24 hours, the Ukrainians have completely stabilized the front line, and there are almost no Russian movements to be spoken of. There is one small movement that did occur near Vovchansk. It does appear that the Russians were able to take the meatpacking plant, but beyond that, the advances that the Russian Federation are making are next to none, especially in the area of the western offensive front in this area. We can see that the Russians made no advance whatsoever. The no man's land area did change according to Deep State, but the Russians did not advance a single foot forward across this entire front. Meanwhile, in the area of Vovchansk, the story is similarly repeated. The Russians were able to move through a small forest area and take the meatpacking plant, but beyond that, the Russians have had an incredibly difficult time moving into Vovchansk. Now, the Ukrainian forces have moved into the area and set up effective defensible positions. The Russians are pretty much being held where they are. The Russian advance near Buhrovatka has also been met with heavy resistance as well, and has been completely stopped by Ukrainian forces on the western side of the Seversky Donets, as the Russians are attempting to break through, but are making absolutely no progress at that at all. This front line has practically entered a state of a complete halt. And not only that, the losses in this direction are unbelievably high, leading us to have, over just the past few days since this offensive began, the highest loss days and infantry losses of the entirety of the war on a daily average. That, of course, is including the rest of the front lines, but this single additional offensive alone has made the Russian death toll, or really casualty toll, for the Russian armed forces the highest it's ever been. We've actually seen that it has broken records, and today, I believe, is the second highest loss day that has been seen in the Russian army's history so far in the invasion of Ukraine. It is unbelievable what's been going on here, and I'm going to be showing you all the footage and also breaking down what exactly is happening in these different areas. First off, we're going to be starting in probably one of the most important parts of this offensive right now, which is the small Russian finger in the offensive that has made it to Buhrovatka. This area appears to be fairly active, and we have seen that Ukrainian infantry have been fighting the Russians right outside of the village of Buhrovatka right here in this clip. So, without further ado, here's the footage. And we're going to be muting that because we can hear the rave music already beginning. But we can see the Ukrainians firing into the underbrush as the Russians are attempting to maneuver around and towards the village of Buhrovatka. From what we understand, the Ukrainian forces that are currently in this direction are holding back all Russian forces at this point, and we have not seen them advance further into Buhrovatka or beyond it, capturing the bridge that is directly east of the village. We can see the Ukrainians in the clip continuing to move around through the very thick underbrush. This kind of foliage will pose problems both for the Ukrainian defenders and the Russian attackers, as really no one can see each other because of how thick the underbrush is. So firefights are going to be very close up, within dozens of meters or less at this moment in this area, but that may also lead to the Ukrainians having an advantage, considering that Russian forces are having to advance on the Ukrainians and then engage them, which could end up being detrimental to the Russian advancing forces. We have also seen several clips here of the Ukrainians already taking prisoners in this clip. We have also seen them firing from some of the village houses in Buhrovatka. We can see this guy observing some of the decor in one of these houses, and also looking at himself in a mirror. We now see them on one of the main streets inside of the town of Buhrovatka, and now moving down it, most likely moving towards the position of Russian forces and beginning to engage them. And we can see the Ukrainians continuing to move around the very outskirts of the village. We can also see an explosion out there in the distance. We can see this guy fire an AT weapon, hitting the same spot. And we can see the Ukrainians continuing to move around in this thick foliage, attempting to try and hit Russian forces. It appears that a Russian vehicle has been hit right here and knocked out near Buhrovatka, and it does appear to be a BMP-1 that has been destroyed, meaning that some Russian armor that has made it all the way down to Buhrovatka, which we understand at the moment is an incredibly low amount, is already beginning to sustain pretty high losses, and it appears that the Russians are making no forward gain whatsoever in that direction. Meanwhile, in the city of Vovchansk, we have seen that Russian forces are confirmed to be in the area of the Vovchansk Central Hospital, which is this area right here around the water treatment plant. This does mean that at the moment, this area in between the meatpacking plant, which is right up here on this part of the city, and the hospital is no man's land, as Ukrainians and Russians are probably both intermingling in these areas and are vying for control of the multiple different city blocks that exist in between the Vovchansk Central Hospital and the area of the meatpacking plant. Beyond that, there is a lot of combat footage that has come out from this area today, showing us the fighting inside the city and also the additional reinforcements that have been brought in by the Ukrainians to stop the Russian offensive and also continue to shore up defensive positions so that way the Russians will not make it farther. We were able to see this clip right here of a undefined area within Vovchansk, but showing I believe it's the, let me make sure I'm getting this correct. Sadly, I do not know what unit this is, but here's the clip from this unit inside of Vovchansk. We hear firefights occurring down the street. We can see them now moving around the outskirts of the village.
Проламуємося зараз туди до пацанів. Плюс.
And we can see them now continuing to move around the buildings on the outskirts, most likely trying to get into an advantageous position on the Russians. The Russians just fired and almost took this guy's face off right here. You can see that right here. That was really close. We now see this Ukrainian soldier trying to move around the other side of the house to get a drop on the Russians. We see him climbing through some of the tin that made up the roofing. And now he's getting on through the underbrush. Oh my goodness, did you see that? Dude, that Russian
riddled the whole corridor.
That Russian at the end of the corridor just held up an RPK, and I guess at waist level, and just sprayed it down the corridor, hitting no one, but making one of the craziest movie-level shots we've seen so far of the Battle of Vovchansk. Here it is again, right there. That is insane.
That guy in the middle almost got it.
Dude, he almost got graced, like, all the way. But no one got wounded out of that. We now see the Ukrainians continuing to try and engage the Russians that are further down this alleyway, and now advancing onto them and tossing grenades over the fence where the Russians are at the moment. We now see them holding the corner, and the clip ends there, but still showing some of the very close fighting, close quarters combat that is happening inside of Vovchansk, and showing that the Ukrainians have a lot of bravery, considering that this guy, right here at this part of the clip, in the center of the alley, didn't even flinch. Watch this again. Look. Guy didn't even flinch. He just kind of looked down to make sure his footing was good and then just started moving towards the wall. This guy's got some balls. Like right there for sure, no question. But meanwhile, the Ukrainians are continuing to engage in heavy fighting on the outskirts of Vovchansk against the Russian forces. And meanwhile, deeper inside the city, we've seen that battles are continuing somewhere in between the area of the meatpacking plant and the central hospital. Here's the clip from the Ukrainians showing the center of Vovchansk already suffering a decent amount of damage as the defense has proven to be dogged against the Russian advances, and the Russians have been making practically no progress over the past day or two. We now see the Ukrainians loading up a grenade launcher and firing it into the buildings nearby. We see here that there was some
those guys just materialized. Wow.
Yeah, and dude, this guy comes in with a saw. He's just like, hang on, bro. And it just starts hosing people down. We now see them continuing to engage Russian forces from this building. We can see a CZ Bren 2. See him firing on automatic at the Russians in the distance, mostly trying to keep their heads low. We can also see right there that an impact was apparently had near the building. We can also see them evacuating some wounded Ukrainians as well. And continuing to lay down fire at the Russians. And our video clip ends there, but showing once again more battles that are continuing inside of the city of Vovchansk. Meanwhile, we were able to get footage showing that the Russians are at the Vovchansk Central Hospital area, which we're able to see on satellite right here. It's this building right here that you see, and it's also this building down here, or really this compound more so, that is also a part of the Vovchansk Central Hospital. We believe that the building we were seeing in the clip is this one up here on the northern side that is also a part of the Vovchan Central Hospital. I'll be showing y'all the clip, and it does show that the Russians are in this area of the town, and we can see it right here. So here's the building, and let's make sure to geolocate this. There appears to be some kind of a white wall and also some additional stuff as well. So maybe that is actually down here towards this building. It may actually be this little tin roof that is about... well, maybe not. I believe that is another side of the building, which we can't really see all too well. I'm trying to see if we can get an exact geolocation on this, because there's a little stairwell that moves up right there, and maybe, just maybe, so I'm assuming that it's this little stairwell right here, because, nope, that's not it. It's somewhere around this building in particular. That's where we know that the Russians were in this clip. But I'll show you all the Russians, and because, of course, in their brilliance, they look like they're doing great. So here's the clip. We can see the Russians moving around the building. We can see one Russian get out on this tin roof, and immediately he slips and falls. Bam!
Oh my God, man. That was a hell of a fall right there. He needs the hospital now, but he's already shot it up.
Man, that's unfortunate for him. What a bad place to fall out of a window, right outside of the hospital that you literally just forced to be evacuated. Unfortunate for him. Also, it looks like none of the Russian soldiers nearby, like this guy, are going to help him. They're just going to watch this guy frolic on the ground now, now that he's most likely given himself a look into the future by hitting his head that hard. But still, once again, showing the Russians are in the area, but I don't think they're really anything to be that concerned about, considering that they do something that stupid. That guy is probably going to end up winning a Darwin Award. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see that more urban combat groups are moving in. This is apparently Timur's special unit, which is a part of the GRU. We hear the copyrighted music already spooling up, so we'll have to mute that. But we can see, once again, the footage we saw earlier. There was a little bit at the beginning that was new, and I'm going to be skipping forward a little bit to make sure that we're not missing anything at the end. And it doesn't look like we are, so it really just showed their drive in, but nevertheless a part of Timur's special unit, a part of the GRU that is now inside of Vovchansk and helping out with the defense. The defense is apparently so strong of the town of Vovchansk from the Ukrainian side that the Russians are finding that their progress is greatly impeded, much more so than their original battle plans anticipated. For this reason, we have been seeing that the Russians are beginning to conduct fire bombings of Vovchansk, dropping incendiary rounds directly into the city, which is a violation of the rules of war. The rules of war state that incendiary weapons cannot be used in heavily populated areas or areas that would be believed to be heavily populated, like an urban settlement, and the Russians are using incendiaries, such as white phosphorus, on this city. Once again showing that they are committing war crimes to further their aims of taking the town, but nevertheless, it still is proving to be unfruitful as Russian forces are not advancing and are still taking incredibly high losses within this area. Also, considering the geolocation here, we can see a larger church inside of Vovchansk. We can actually geolocate exactly where that is. And let me see if I can find that church. So let's see, this is some kind of a monument. Every city in Ukraine has an aircraft monument, which is really just typical for any Soviet city. And we're still trying to find that church in particular. And for some reason, it's not really showing up anywhere, which is so weird because I'm like, we can easily geolocate this because there's a landmark. And then we will never find the landmark once we go looking for it. So I be dipped. I can't find that church. It is in Vovchansk. We've seen it in 2 separate clips. So it is somewhere centrally located in Vovchansk. It's just that we can't find it anywhere in the city. So with that, we're going to have to sadly move on from geolocating that view exactly. And we're now going to be moving on once again into a bit more of a general overview of the area of the Vovchansk, I guess you could say the Vovchansk front of this offensive. So far, it does appear that the Ukrainians are doing an incredibly good job, considering that the Russians are now using incendiaries on Vovchansk. We are believing that that means that the Ukrainians are holding the town so well, Russians are not able to make progress unless they begin to burn the town to the ground. We also understand that at Buhrovodka, which is a very important axis on this front, that the Ukrainians are holding this area at the moment and the Russians are not advancing, which also means that the Ukrainians will have a complete control over the major points right now in this front line. If the Russians do end up taking the village of Buhrovodka, that may pose some issues, although we already expect the Ukrainian supply lines have moved further south from the bridge crossing at Buhrovodka and are most likely crossing at Rubizhny, which doesn't really add a lot of logistical complications or difficulties at the moment. We would understand that the Ukrainians are in a very good position in this area and that the Russians are doing very poorly. Moving on from that and over into the area of the Plina front, which is named after the place where the Russians first crossed to the village of Plina, absolutely no advance has been made at all in this area over the past 24 hours, not a single one, and losses appear to be mounting higher and higher. We were able to see that a decent amount of Russians were taken as prisoners of war in this direction today, once again showing that Russian forces have a very low amount of morale, and not only that, are apparently running into such stiff resistance from the Ukrainians that the Ukrainians may end up counterattacking the Russians, overrunning some of their positions, which is leading them to surrender. Because here in this picture, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and maybe a 10th prisoner somewhere in there. I can't really tell for sure, so we're just going to count it as 9. But that is an entire Russian infantry squad that was just taken as a prisoner in this front, and is showing that some of these units are being completely overwhelmed, even on the offensive, and are now being forced to surrender, most likely due to low morale as well, which is already starting to hit these Russian frontline troops like a brick. We were also able to see that Zelensky met with the 92nd today, which has been moved into the Kharkiv region, and we can see him awarding unit citations at this point in the battle already, which is very interesting to see. And not only that, we were able to hear that the venerable 82nd Airborne Brigade, which was usually in the area around Robotny and was also equipped with British Challenger 2 main battle tanks, has also been moved into the area as well to counter the Russian threat. And so here is the clip, and this is the 82nd Brigade saying that they had been moved into Kharkiv.
82-ї окремої десантно-штурмової бригади. Захищаємо батьківщину від ворожого вторгнення. Зараз ми втримуємо просування ворога на наш дорогий Харків. Ми втримуємо наші позиції. Нам дуже потрібна ваша підтримка і допомога. Особливо нам потрібні реби, антидронові пристрої, окопні реби для захисту і збереження життів наших військовослужбовців. Для ефективної протидії ворожим штурмам нам потрібні FPV-дрони та мавіки. Ми звертаємось до благодійного фонду Ukraine Aid Operation, їх спонсорів і благодійників. Разом до перемоги! Слава Україні! Героям слава!
And that's the
Slava. And also, by the way, I know those guys, Ukraine 8 Ops, and we might fundraise for them in the future, by the way. They're on GuideStar, I think, and they've been in contact with us before. And unfortunately, that's the one I was telling you to look at before. And we'll have to look deeper into that one, because actually the guys are out there in the field saying we want more from them.
And that is something that we will have to look into, and we are trying to see about making possible, but GuideStar with YouTube is a bit of a thing. It would take a lot to explain, but nevertheless, we will look into it. Moving on from that, we also got to hear that NATO, which was original, I want to make this very clear to everyone, because I remember so long ago, it was like a week ago, that we were the only people on YouTube when this offensive began that said that this is not going to turn out badly. I said that this is probably going to end up turning out well for the Ukrainians. It doesn't look like it's a good or well-executed offensive, and not only that, there are a major amount of problems that are already being seen that will stop this Russian offensive from really developing into anything dire or severe. And a lot of people laughed at us and said, oh, there's the typical pro-Ukraine propagandist, the enforcer, and Enforcer Matt, all saying stupid crap that doesn't make any sense. Ukraine is doomed, and that's it. People ought to wake up to the times, and people ought to know, because this offensive, according to everyone on YouTube, and I want to make this very clear, it was everyone on YouTube, they said the Russians are going to break through, the Ukrainians are completely overwhelmed, it's those damned Americans that didn't support them in time, and they were going to take Kharkiv, and they were going to begin pushing towards Poltava, and then onwards towards Kyiv. The war was going to be over. And then, not only that, they said, oh, look, we have military analysts to back it up. And then I went through on this channel a day after the offensive began, and I said, this is being completely blown out of proportion, and I listed off every single thing about why this offensive would not progress in any major way and why there would be no major breakthroughs. And now today, NATO is saying that they're going to be doubtful that there's a breakthrough. And they were some of the people who were originally saying at the beginning of this offensive, it may be entirely possible that the Russians end up conducting a breakthrough. Now it looks like they're seeing the same thing that I was saying we were all going to see days ago about this offensive, and now a breakthrough is not possible. Shocker. Really, I mean, it's an absolute shock. I mean, if you looked at this outside of the war, and you just looked at an offensive that was being conducted like this, the number one thing that anyone would say is that this offensive is going nowhere. And that's what we've seen. It doesn't look like it was going to go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. And it looks like the Ukrainians are already beginning to contain and control the Russian advance forwards. But still, that is something I got to say. It's very nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to hold this front and were able to stop it. because there wasn't really a lot of hope out there that they would. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little front line for just a second. Well, actually, not a little front line. It's actually one of the most active ones of the day. And we have heard that Ukraine has been hitting some major Russian ammunition facilities today, like the one in Tula. And some people have been wondering if Ukraine should focus primarily on the specifics of the oil refineries being knocked out, or specifically trying to target ammunition factories and also manufactories for military equipment. A lot of people have had many different things to say about this. Some people are saying that they should split focus. Some people are saying that they should focus only on oil refineries. Some people are saying that they should only focus on defense targets. But a lot of people are across the board on what they're saying and what they're thinking. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, about what Ukrainian strikes should look like in the future? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now today that we've seen that Ukraine hit the basalt ammo facility in Russian Tula, where we're hearing now there's a big question out there, and it says, should Ukraine focus on just hitting oil refineries or also hit the ammo facilities as well? It looks like about 58% said split focus between both targets. 24% said focus only on the refineries, and 13% said no, focus on defense targets only. And on this one, I have to say, it's a little bit tough to split focus between both targets, because if Ukraine goes all in on the oil refineries like they've been doing, in my opinion, that will have a much bigger impact than hitting a couple ammo facilities, because Russia will simply source ammo from elsewhere. But when it comes to the oil, that's a totally different animal. And if Ukraine can take out the oil refineries and Russia can't refine their oil, that's going to potentially collapse the Russian economy, which is much bigger than simply knocking out one single ammo facility. So, in my opinion, they should keep their entire focus on hitting those refineries and hit a couple of defense targets here and there if they're on the way, but I wouldn't go out of the way to split focus between the two. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think it would be important to strike both targets, because it wouldn't be a great thing to prioritize one over the other. They should really try their best to focus on singular objectives and then try and knock those out wherever they can. Really, wherever the best opportunity arises, they should try and knock out those targets first. So if the ammunition and firearms production factories in Tula appear to be opportune targets, they should go ahead and strike those along with the oil refineries. Why limit themselves? If anything can be deemed a military target, it should be stricken. That includes oil refineries, ammunition manufactories, artillery shell manufactories, tank factories, things like that. Those things should be targeted and destroyed as soon as possible. Every single one of them being knocked out starts to decrease efficiency and the number of production of Russian equipment in certain categories. And this will start to greatly reduce the Russians' freedom to do whatever they want in Ukraine, because now they have to factor in the limited amount of supplies that their armed forces are going to be receiving over those periods of time. So overall, in my opinion, I think that they should be striking everything that they can. And speaking of which,
although the only catch is, though, the same thing that you just explained for Russia with them having a limited ammo source, that's the same thing for Ukraine. If Ukraine decides to just blitz literally everything inside of Russia, let's hit the defense facilities, the ammo facilities, also the oil refineries, and also let's hit the electrical places as well. Ukraine's going to run out of ammo a lot quicker, those long-range ammos, than they would if they just focused on the oil refineries. And they might run out so fast they're not able to accomplish their mission with the refineries all the way, which would effectively run their plan to collapse the Russian economy, in my opinion. So I think that's the main reason I'm saying hit the refineries only, because if they spread themselves too thin, then they might run into trouble.
Maybe so, but considering that they're conducting all of these attacks with largely inexpensive and easy to produce long-range drones, I wouldn't consider it to be too much of an issue, because I would be expecting that they're probably producing far more long-range drones than are currently being used at the moment. So they may be able to heavily ramp up the amount of attacks that they're conducting and be able to strike really anything and everything that they would want to without running into any kind of a shortage issue like they would with other kinds of equipment. Like with the 155mm shells, they have to keep into account how much they have and how much they're using, because those are provided by the West, and also even still, those are largely in finite numbers. But with the long-range drones that they're using, those are entirely manufactured in Ukraine and are also largely inexpensive and easy to produce, meaning that they can make those in mass And for that reason, it may be one of the few things where they can go all out and just go full throttle and strike anything and everything that they want. But then again, we don't really have a good idea of how many long-range drones the Ukrainians are manufacturing, because that information is kept secret by the Ukrainian government, and the industry that's involved in that is also very secretive as well. So we're taking a guess that they're probably producing a large amount of long-range drones, but Matthew may be right. They may have a limited number, and that means that they kind of have to end up picking and choosing what they end up hitting. And if they had to pick and choose anything, I would have to agree with Matthew. The oil refineries would be better to pick, because the oil refineries will end up impacting the Russian armed forces a lot more than ammunition shortages would, because believe it or not, the Russians have endless amounts of small arms ammunition available inside the Russian Federation that is just being, that's just been sitting around. And they would still be selling that to the United States if we hadn't sanctioned the Russians on selling ammunition to the United States, I believe back in 2013 or 2014. But beyond that, this is something that I would have to say, if they have the ability to strike everything, they should, but if they have to pick one or the other, I think that that the refineries should be prioritized as the target. And so with that, I hope that does resonate well. And also, Aaron LSA said, Tula ammunition is cheap trash. And you are so freaking right, because if y'all don't know, Tula, the firearms company, actually, this specific factory that got knocked out, actually produced ammunition 7.62 by 39, I think, and 5.45 by 39, as well as 7.62 by 54R for sale on the private market or the commercial sector here in the United States. And the ammo is absolute dog water. I have run into it in the past when shooting some older Soviet guns, and it is literal garbage. I hate Tula ammo, and I think it's some of the worst. And Tula doesn't really have that great of a reputation in the collector's world either. Everyone would rather have an Izmash or an Izhvesk weapon more so than a Tula, because Tula just sucks. I think it's literally like bottom of the barrel Russian garbage that comes out of Tula. So I would say, out of everything in Russia, if you get a Tula, you may as well just kiss your ass goodbye. But if you get something out of, say, and let me see if I can find it, because it's near, let's see, where in the world is near Ivanovo? And it's somewhere up here. Where in the world's Izmash? Because it was up around here somewhere, and now I can't find it. Anyways, Izmash and Izhvesk are a lot better quality, in my opinion. I'd go with those any other day rather than Tula. Tula is terrible. Tula is awful. It is actually poo-poo. It is hot dog water. And Matthew, I know that you have... What?
I was laughing about the hot dog water thing.
Man, I thought you were laughing about something else, because that laugh like almost came out completely out of nowhere. I was like, what? Oh, what? It's like, what in the world is this? But still, let me see. I think I can find y'all the Tula Firearms Factory. They have a confectionery plant here too, so if you get shot, you can have a little bit of sugar. And then, let's see.
You mean the basalt facility?
Let's see. Well, not really the basalt facility. I'm really trying to just find the Tula Firearms Factory, because they have a major firearms manufacturing in this city. And I'm trying to find where that is, because I think that the actual gun manufacturing and the ammunition factory may be separate from each other, and I'm not finding it for some... What in the world is up with geolocation tonight? Like, I'm not finding squat that I'm looking for. Dang. I'm telling you, it's a rough life out here today. I wish I could find it for y'all. I sadly can't. I can pull up the Tula Firearms.
I've been in that box.
Let's see. Yeah, maybe that'll find it. Dude, I'm just so used to actually being able to pull it up and find it. Tula Firearms. Let's see. Not Firearms Store. It's the Tula... Dang, I think I'm actually going to have to go.
Ammo cache?
I'm just going to type over here, Tula Arms Factory, and I'm sure you'll find us the address. So the Tula, wait a minute. I think I remember where this is now. Let me see if I can figure it out. Oh yeah, it's this place here. It's this building. It's this pile of garbage here. That is the actual Tula Arms plant. Now I remember, because when I saw this picture, I was like, ew. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's right there. Because you can actually see the Kremlin style building, I believe, somewhere right around here. Wait, no. This is the Tula's arms plant right here. I think that Kremlin building is somewhere across the street over here. But, oh wait, it's right there. Yeah, there it is. So this is the Tula Firearms Factory right here on this like little smaller island kind of a thing. And tell me, do y'all think that high quality weapons would be coming out of a place that looks like that? No. Like, I would not think that one bit. Look at that building in the back, dude.
Listen, the ammo that comes out of here, that ammo is coming out talking about, this is not your ammo, this is our ammo.
Dude, this thing comes out like the century egg, man. It's in there going, I've been in a wretched hole for 70 years. It's like, oh my god, it's like, put that out of its misery. I mean, look at, like, I cannot get this off enough. This place looks awful. I mean, it's terrible. And this thing has been around for a long time, too. I think the Tula firearms plant has been around since, like, the 1800s, I believe. Actually, no, 1712. So it's been around for a hot minute. That's actually their logo. But, like, would y'all think that high-quality guns would come out of a place like this? No. You know what? Let me go get the Colt Firearms Factory in Hartford, Connecticut. And let's see. Factory... the Colt Gun Factory in Hartford. Let me go see if I can show you all the Colt Armory in the modern day. Let me see here. The Colt Armory is about as old, well, not as old as 1712, but the buildings that are there nowadays are about as old as the buildings that are in the Tula plant now. And let me see if I can find it on the map. So here we go. So I think this is it. Let me make sure. Let me double check. Yep, this looks to be it. Oh, it's called Colt CZ now, man. That is so sad. But anyways, here is the Colt Firearms manufacturing plant right here. It's this building. And you look at it over there, and that's what the Colt manufacturing plant looks like. Kind of, sort of. But, you know, there's another one, I think, on the other side of town. But I think this is where a lot of the manufacturing is done these days. This, which, you know, looks like a normal industrial building, versus that, which looks like a Soviet gulag in the middle of Tula. The quality just will not be there. But anyways... with that, I hope that does address that well. Sorry to go on a rabbit hole about that, but I don't like looking at crap that looks like garbage, and Tula looks like garbage. And it also is garbage from my experience. But moving on out of Tula, it is time for us to start moving on into another big bit of breaking news that happened in the war today. And that happened a little bit further south and out of the area of Kharkiv. That actually happened in the area around Sevastopol. Shocking news came out very recently about what has happened down in Sevastopol and the kind of damage that was caused from the Ukrainian attacks that occurred about a day or two ago at this point, and the damage was unbelievably severe. It appears to be some of the worst attacks that have ever been conducted on the Russian Air Force in terms of lost numbers of actual combat aircraft, and it is something that really you will probably not see again, at least for about a month. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure to talk about something really quickly, because NATO does say that the Russians don't have enough forces for a breakthrough in the Kharkiv Oblast, and a lot of people have been wondering, is that true or not? Of course, NATO says one thing, and they've largely been seen, like we showed on this channel just a little bit ago, to not really be on the best of analysis terms. But what do people think about it? Do they think that the Russians do not have enough manpower for a breakthrough? Do they think that the Russians are going to send in more troops and conduct a breakthrough anyways? What are y'all thinking, and what are you thinking, Matthew?
All right, so it looks like everyone, about 60%, said it's true. Russia does not have enough troops for a breakthrough in Kharkiv. It looks like 16% said it's false. Russia will send more troops, and that 16% said, I really need more intel on this first. And on this one, I gotta say, I'm not shocked that Russia doesn't have enough, because I had figured that this is probably some sort of ruse. I didn't think this was a real offensive. It looks like it's probably more than likely than not. This is a real offensive, so it doesn't appear to be a ruse at this point, in my opinion, but, you know, it's still up in the air a little bit. But if you'll recall, a lot of channels out there said, this is going to be so bad for Ukraine, it's going sideways, it's going south. And now NATO command's even coming out and saying that's not the case. Russia couldn't take Kharkiv if they wanted to. And remember, these troops that are going in there that Russia's sending in are still the poorly trained same troops that go in with barely any training whatsoever, and also poor equipment. And they're trying to go up against the well-armed Ukrainians with a lot better training, especially with the training from the West. So it's just not going to work. The Russians are trying their best to make it look like they're doing something, but in reality, they're going to probably get held up in Vovchansk, and that's probably going to be where that whole offensive dies, in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say this is something that the Russians failed at from the outset, because the offensive was conducted so poorly. And we went over this a while ago, but I'll make sure to go over this again tonight, so that way we can lay out why this offensive was doomed to fail from the beginning. One, they never advanced down the major highway, the E105. Never did that. That was already an immediate failing, because while it would be the typical route of advance for an offensive force, it is also really the only road in the area that could support a larger amount of road traffic. It's one of the few paved ones in the area. Beyond that, you start to get into dirt, like this one right here, which is largely a dirt road. And when you talk about dirt roads versus paved roads, the actual impact on logistical speed and logistical abilities is massive. It's a huge night and day difference. And the fact that the Russians did not move down the E105 and decided to move down roads like Plina and others, that was a complete failing from the absolute start. Not only that, there are no major roadworks on the Russian side near Plina at all, which means that Russian supply trucks are having to travel pretty much through the open fields to even get to the Russian forces on the front, meaning that logistical efficiency is greatly reduced, the travel times are much larger, the vehicles are traveling at slower speeds, and they're much easier targets, and that once again ensures that even less supplies will make it to the Russian frontline forces. Not only that, the area that they decided to advance in was a suicidal one. There isn't really a lot of tree cover near to the border area. There are sporadic amounts of small, I guess you could say, fillings of forest, like, for example, near the village of Krasny, there's a decent amount. But when you're advancing on the Ukrainian forces that are near to the area of Hleboke or in the area of Lukyantsy, Lukyantsy is on a hill that is overlooking Plina and also any Russian advance moving towards Morokovets, meaning that every Russian vehicle that moves into this area is immediately spotted by Ukrainian forces and can be fired on. In the area of Hleboke, Hleboke has a clear view up to Streletsha, where Russian forces currently are at the moment, and not only that, they have a clear view to the area of Morokovets as well, meaning that any Russian forces, well really, Hleboke can look straight over at Lukyantsy as well, meaning that there is an intersecting lane of fire for offensive Russian forces moving towards Hleboke and Lukyantsy, because Ukrainian forces in both of those villages can focus fire on the advancing Russians from both sides, being that there's really no good way for the Russians to advance in the specific area, and not only that, they can easily engage and destroy Russian forces literally once they cross the border in areas like Streletsha and Plina, considering that they can see them once they move out of Plina or Streletsha. So overall, this was a terrible offensive plan, just over the geography alone, and also the lack of really usable supply routes or roads for supply lines to be run off of. And not only that, the Russians, we don't really know the quality of the units at the moment. That's still something that's being ascertained, but it appears off of initial analysis that the quality of the Russian units being used are quite poor. It may be entirely conscripts because the morale was shockingly low. I believe that their morale would hold through for at least several weeks, but their morale is already collapsing within just several days. It's really about 4 days, and we're already beginning to see that there are major morale hits happening to the Russians, and they're beginning to surrender or retreat to the point that they're being threatened with execution by barrier forces. So that seems to be showing that the quality of troops, even dedicated to the suicidal offensive, were already incredibly low as well. Then over in the area of Vovchansk, it appears that they didn't really have a good plan for advancing on Vovchansk either. It seems to be somewhat slow. It took them about 3 days to even move on to Vovchansk, which gave the Ukrainians enough time to start fortifying and reinforcing the garrisons that were there, and also to begin to build larger defensive positions. Also, they were able to defend the area around Buhrovatka, which is largely forested and has really no roadworks at all. You can see right here, the only road is actually a berm. It's literally the berm in between some farm fields, and that's the road. The Russians are trying to advance armored vehicles through a forest, which is suicidal, and also infantry on the Buhrovatka onto the Ukrainians at point-blank range, which will end up doing pretty poorly for them. And overall, that was once again poorly thought out. And then on top of that, in the Vovchansk area, they're moving into the city, and they're still taking pretty high losses at that, and they're hardly moving through the city either. So overall, it was a doomed defensive from the start. I don't even know why anyone gave it any major credence, and I have seen some people in the chat saying, I haven't seen any channels that said that. Oh, believe me, I don't know where you've been, but several days ago, everyone was in this channel going, oh my god, everyone said earlier today that Kharkiv got invaded, and it's over. And we had to address that night. And I remember that there was at least 3 to 4 people that we heard of individually that were saying that it was over for Ukraine, that were pro-Ukrainians, because literally anything that happens that's unexpected, everyone wants to act like it's the end of the world these days. And it's not. And especially considering looking at everything and giving a real breakdown, there was never any way that they would have been able to make it through. We knew that as soon as the offensive began, and now recapping it and looking at the offensive falling flat on its face, that analysis stood up to be entirely true at this moment. But I hope we were able to address that the best we can, at least about the Kharkiv offensive, the breakdown, and why it would never end up succeeding. I just don't know why people would say something like that. I still get blown away that people just say whatever and they don't really have any backing or any kind of good analysis about it, because it wasn't just YouTube channels that were saying it, and some people are also saying this as well. It was channels like CNN and Fox News, which are mainstream channels, saying that the Ukrainians were doomed. And it's just ridiculous to say something like that. They didn't even back it up with any proof. They just said, oh, look, the Russians are advancing into Kharkiv. It's over. Like, why? Like, they didn't even, I don't even think they even explained that on their news organizations as to why it was over. And on top of that, usually I've found that mainstream news reporters, no smoke, but giving them smoke, usually have no actual idea of how wars are fought. And usually watch movies like Civil War, which recently came out, and then they believe that an Apache gunship would go and hover its way down into a city block and start firing on people at point blank range, and that's what they think it is. Or they think it looks like Avengers Endgame, where everyone just charges at each other in an open field, and the battle is won just by pure numbers, or just by the forces of evil having the chakra or whatever. Those people have no concept, and it's backed up now 100%, have no concept of military analysis or how to break down anything and look at it and explain that this will be a failure. And it already has turned out to be a failure. Everyone's starting to see that. And it's something that I gotta say, it's just nice to know that we get the analysis right on this channel. And Matthew actually has some major breaking news to share with us right now. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so this is likely going to be the first time any of y'all on this channel or anyone has probably heard about this, because the NOTAM was just issued. But also a huge shout out to Kurt and Heather, by the way, for sending this information, because I have not seen this anywhere reported. A NOTAM was just issued that Russia plans on holding a live fire missile test right off the coast of California, and there's a 10-day window where they're going to do this. And there's a massive NOTAM, like an area where you cannot go due to these missile and either rocket firing, something like that. I was trying to get some information on. There's really a lack of information because the NOTAM was just issued, but it looks like they're going to be firing rockets to impact right off the west coast. And the rockets are being fired toward our country, apparently. And they're going to be landing in the water right off the coast. So this is absolutely unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this, actually. And I'm trying to find more information here about where exactly, what type of missile this is. But it's kind of wild to hear. Like, there's really a lack of information. But Enforcer, what do you think?
That is pretty wild to hear. And do we have a map of how big the NOTAM area is and how close it is to Russia? I mean, California?
Yes, so I liked the post. I'm actually going to not retweet it because I haven't verified it yet, but I've liked it. It's on our Twitter page. And also, I do have some more up-close photos here that I can send to you on Discord to take a look here at the NOTAM. It's actually, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen anything like this. This is unprecedented. And I'm not making a big deal out of this for nothing. They're literally planning on firing a missile right off the coast of California. That's insane.
Actually, it's right off the coast of California and Mexico. The NOTAM area goes pretty much up to the territorial waters of the United States and also Mexico, through the area of the Baja Peninsula, and also just right outside of San Diego, and then expands into the ocean probably several hundred miles. According to the information that has been put out on this NOTAM, which appears to have come from some sort of a flight radar, it says the Russian Federation plans to conduct rocket firings in the impact area, WI, the Oakland, sadly, I do not know what those abbreviations stand for, but nevertheless, it does appear that this was just announced just minutes ago, and it appears that the Russians are attempting on conducting some sort of a rocket or missile test, and debris or the impact is going to be incredibly close to the San Diego Baja Peninsula area. So that is wild. Hopefully we can get some more verification on this, because this is, well, of course, the first moment that we've heard of such a thing. But to give you all this area outside of the flight radar that we're kind of seeing right here, that little yellow splotch up here that kind of has like a bowl shape to it, that is actually the San Francisco, well, actually the San Diego Bay area right there that you could see. And then this area is Tijuana, which is a major Mexican city, and we can see that this exclusionary zone goes all the way from San Diego down to the area of the Baja Peninsula. And let's see where in the world that area is. It's where the Baja Peninsula makes a pretty large tapering off. So let's see if we can zoom out to get an idea of where this is. So it appears to go all the way down to the area of the island of Guadalupe and all the way out into the sea somewhere out to about here. So this is a massive NOTAM area, and that is really concerning to see that it is so close to San Diego, which is one of the largest cities on the United States western seaboard. And also near Tijuana.
Also,
go ahead.
Also, Enforcer, can you go back to the NOTAM page and give me the actual code that was listed on the bottom of that? I'm trying to verify that on the actual FAA website to make sure we're looking at something legit here.
So the NOTAM ID is A1922 /24 space open parenthesis KZAK close parenthesis.
Let's see here. So I'm looking here. Let's see. I'm seeing a NOTAM issued here for San Francisco International Airport. Let's see. I'm trying to match it up. You can continue while I'm looking at this, by the way. It's going to take just a minute.
All right. And so while Matthew is continuing with that, and hopefully we're able to get a little bit more backup information on if that's true or not and verify it, we are now going to be moving on really quickly down into the area of the Dnipro River, because we do have an interesting little bit of news that Magyar's Birds was watching and also helped to actively stop a Russian attempt to retake the Nistras Island in the middle of the Dnipro Reservoir. Here is the clip right here.
Бажаю міцного. Зайшли човники, я зрозумів. Після розшарювання Миколаївського...
When you see the Russian boats advancing towards the island.
За перший день на телеграм-каналі такого я ще не зустрічав. Окей, 15 плюс хробаків двома штурмовими гадями газують до звільненого ЗСУ острова Нестрига. Вночі на пролом, сподіваючись залишитися непокараними.
Well, you see the boats beginning to circle for some reason.
Питання від обубасморської піхоти буде своєрідним. Знову доведеться блюрити, бо ФБ та Ютуб заблокують. Тому повну версію дивіться за посиланням в Телеграмі. Та вже вибачайте.
Also, real quick, Enforcer, just a quick update here. I'm not familiar with how to use the FAA system to look up in their database the NOTAM alerts. So I really can't figure that out right now because it's a little too complicated. But based on what I'm seeing here, the NOTAM appears to match ForeFlight, which is another program here. I believe that's the program they took a screenshot of. But I'm going to say this. It looks legitimate based on what we're seeing here. It appears to be above board. But I'm going to wait to see if there's official word from the DOD, because obviously this will be something that will have to be addressed probably by the president himself, because this is such a significant event. So we'll just have to wait and see, but this is surely going to be massive headlines tomorrow if this is actually what it appears to be.
And we'll have to see. And also notice, Matthew, that this NOTAM area, this NOTAM time frame is huge. It's an entire 10 days from the 16th of May to the 26th of May, which is pretty wild to see. And also, really quickly, sorry, someone did not confirm. That's why we're doing this on the channel. We're trying to confirm it. So if you're too unintelligent to understand that, you got to go. But beyond that, it's an entire 10-day window, which is pretty wild to see. I mean, that's huge. I mean, anything could happen over the course of 10 days in this massive exclusionary zone, all the way from San Diego, all the way halfway down the Baja Peninsula, which is really wild. And of course we'll have to see if we can get some more information on this, but at the moment we are starting to hear that apparently there's some NOTAM that was just created in this area starting really today effectively, and then leading on into the 26th of May. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, since we'll have to wait for further confirmation in the future, and we're now going to be moving on back to Magyar's Birds. And you see the boats continuing to move around the river.
Тих, що пехнули в одному з човнів, порахувати не вдалося. А от інших подивимося. Тож поїхали.
And we see the boats now linking up, and then they got hit. And hit a second time. It appears that one of the boats is now leaving the scene as the other boat catches on fire, leaving the crew of that boat to fend for themselves.
Нічний доктор прямо над ним, і ви то можете спостерігати. Ну.
We see that boat now charring. We see that the other Russian boat is trying to figure out what to do at the moment, whether to withdraw. And we can see what appears to be a Ukrainian drone dropping a bomb on them, which explodes close nearby to the boat. We now see the normal footage showing the fire on the one boat. And we see what may be another drone here in near to the water. Actually, that was just a lens flare.
до індивідуального спілкування з кожним окремим хробаком покажу вам роботу очима пілота, щоб та операція не здавалася прогулянкою. Де ті човники? Ось, величезний, попереду бампер.
Now you see here one of the Russian boats. It has some kind of a weird attachment on the front of the vessel. We don't know what that is.
Перше приготування.
We now see them dropping the bomblet onto that boat, hitting it, and we can see the fire began. Oh my lord, dude, did you see that guy? He hopped off the side of the boat when the engine caught on fire. The other boat picked up speed, rammed the guy, and probably crushed him. Look at this. He tries to climb off, and then this other boat rams the guy.
Oh, bada boom.
And he disappears.
Broken ribs.
I think that guy went under the waves and never came back.
Але на першому бачимо загоряння миттєве. Другий наповнений хробаками починає.
And we now see the boat moving around. And also, in Cassia 8 said they can't swim? LOL. It's not really that they can't swim, it's just that they're wearing a lot of combat gear and it's probably some very heavy body armor. So if they hop off the boat with all that on, they're going to sink to the bottom just because they're too heavy and not buoyant enough. But we now see the boat circling around. This is the view of the drone that dropped the bomblet on the second boat, and we're watching the second boat at this moment.
Середина Дніпра, коли хробачня зіскочить у воду, що залишиться, то вже будуть наші.
And we now see the drone most likely lining up to drop the bomblet, and it probably will here in about 10 seconds.
Склади. О, газує задом. І стрілкотня. Дивіться, повним складом.
And there goes the bomblet.
Всі.
It then explodes near to the bow of the vessel. We can see a couple of crew members reel backwards, most likely showing that they sustained shrapnel wounds.
Той сосок, що стирчить з води.
And we now see the one boat in the middle of the Dnipro still continuing to burn.
Острова Нестрига. Великий човен саме поряд палає, а другий підбитий прибився до берегу. Я вам його пізніше по світлому покажу. Тим часом нас цікавлять поплавки.
That boat is charring. It looks like the entire boat from bow to stern is on fire, and it looks like the crew did not manage to bail out either, from what we can tell.
Більшість з них у жилетах, грибуть з надією. Звісно, ми ту надію попсуємо трошки, як гадю, котра заблукала. Поки показує, як палає той великий.
We see the boat continuing to just be a roaring inferno. It doesn't look like anyone bailed off of the vessel. Well, actually, it looks like we may have
А тепер
two people that may have been able to bail out. We can't really tell for certain.
хробаків, що грибуть на ручному. Але той човен великий виявився. Порахувати не вдалося загальну кількість. Тим більше відразу підключилися дружні підрозділи ТРО та морської піхоти, навіть міномет.
We see these dots in the water. We're not really sure if those are people or debris from the ship. Well, not the ship, the boat. And we can see that they're trying to make it towards the marsh.
А інші не рахують. То бачите, он грибуть кожний своїм, як то кажуть, пішком. Ну, то й поїхали.
Man, I can see that the question you just asked here one is a pretty interesting one, man. Because I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I'm not too keen on Turkey. And it's like, oh, it's like, really?
Man, Turkey's out here literally laundering fuel.
Man, Turkey be out there mixing stuff like Bill Cosby. Like, it's like, hey, that's wrong. Like, it's like, don't do that.
14 робаків на плаву, вон той з дружніх підрозділів спрацював. Очевидно, 130
But we're going to cut this clip short because it's largely just showing the aftermath of the explosion of the boats. But the Russian attempt to retake, I believe it's Nistry Island, which is this one right here, failed. And the Ukrainians were able to hold the ground. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and about to move on into the big news down here in the area of Crimea. But before we do, a lot of people have been talking about that mixing that Turkey's been doing. Because Turkey's been doing a really special kind of a mix. They've been blending Russian fuel to sell to the European Union to avoid sanctions. They've been doing a little bit of that mixing, and it's the mixing that people really don't like because it's allowing the Russians to try and circumvent sanctions and try and keep their economy afloat in some form. A lot of people have been saying that Turkey should be sanctioned. Some people are even saying that Turkey should be removed from NATO. Some people said, give them a slap on the wrist. And then some people said, well, they don't really know what to think about this, but Nevertheless, this is something that probably will end up being a bit of an issue in the future, considering that they're allowing the Russians to circumvent the sanctions. And Matthew, what are people saying about this, and what are you thinking about it?
So it looks like about 59% of people said Turkey should be sanctioned. It looks like about 17% said, give Turkey a slap on the wrist. And 14% said Turkey should be removed entirely from NATO. And on this one, this is blatant right here. Like, this isn't like an accident or something like that. Turkey is literally blending non-sanctioned fuel with Russian fuel and then selling it to the EU as non-sanctioned fuel altogether, which is just a way for basically Russia to evade sanctions. And we have Turkey out here aiding and abetting a country which is an enemy to the West, basically funding the war effort in Ukraine indirectly. So to me, that is about as bad as it gets. I was reading here on the Post that it looks like Russia has upped their exports to Turkey of the oil tremendously after they started doing this scheme right here. So to me, at the minimum, Turkey should be sanctioned, and Turkey needs to be warned behind the scenes that if they go too hard against Western interests, which at this point, they're going against Western interests in the Middle East and also in Europe as well. They're riding the fence a little bit, but they're starting to cross a line of riding the fence and sort of crossing the line into sort of leaning toward the enemy's side. So I'm not sure how much longer we're going to let that go, but it's starting to get a little bit out of hand. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be entirely honest. They are starting to really cross the line. I've always said on this channel that Turkey does Turkey things, and that's kind of been the explanation of some of the goofy things that Turkey does. But at this point, Turkey is truly doing things that are not only against American interests in the Middle East as a part of their interest for the large part. Now they're doing things against our interest in Europe for the large part by allowing the Russians to find some way to circumvent the sanctions. And so going off of that, there is no way to kick them out of NATO. Just want to put that up front. You can only withdraw from NATO. You can't be kicked out of NATO. But that does not mean that we can sanction them into oblivion. And we can also refuse to sell them weapons in the future. And I believe those two things put together, as far as the threat goes, would probably stop the Turks from doing anything major from this point forward. We have to remember that the Turks are heavily tied in to the European Union, which they are a partial or mostly partial member of. And they are also a major trading partner as far as weapons go with the United States and the rest of the Western world in Western arms manufacturers. And so going off of that, we might want to say, Turkey, you're going to have to stop this immediately, and you're going to have to enforce that the companies inside of Turkey immediately stop this crap. Otherwise, we are going to completely stop selling any kind of American, British, or French weapon systems to you, and also the European Union might consider expelling you, because the European Union can, and will also consider placing sanctions on Turkey for their actions in helping to circumvent the Russian oil sanctions that have currently been placed. Because this is something that is starting to show that the Turks are not just doing Turkey things, they are starting to openly go against Western interests. They have gone against Russian interests throughout the war in Ukraine, but now they're clearly starting to go against Western interests as well. And if they want to do Turkey things to this extent, they can do Turkey things on their own, without any help economically from the West, or without any military help from the West either. And also, someone said Turkey is not a member of the EU. Let me make sure. Is Turkey a member of the EU? Because if I remember correctly, there's some kind of a member of the EU. And let's see. Let's see here. Let's see. So, let's see. Relations between the European Union and Turkey were established in 1959, and in the institutional framework was formalized with the 1963 Ankara Agreement. Albeit not officially a part of the European Union, Turkey is one of the EU's main partners, and both are members of the European Union-Turkey Customs Union. So they're loosely, that's why I said they're kind of partially a part of the European Union. They're a part of a customs agreement with the EU, which kind of gives them the same trade rights as some of the EU countries, and gives them some benefits. The European Union could revoke that trade agreement, the European Union Turkey Customs Agreement, which would end up causing a lot of troubles for Turkey trying to import their products into the European Union, and for the European Union to ship their products into Turkey, which could end up causing economic issues. So with that, I hope that does address that well. They're not a member of the EU, but they are a part of a customs union with the EU, which is kind of the same thing, because custom unions means that you're kind of tied into the European Union's market, and that's obviously how it's working. The European Unions didn't tie themselves into the Turkish market. That's certainly not the case. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well to clarify that, because the European Union does have economic sway over Turkey due to the customs union. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And before we move on into Crimea and the major damage that has been caused to the Russian Air Force in Crimea that has now been confirmed, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first question of the night goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a very generous $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jason, for the support. He says, do you think that the Kharkiv offensive is an attempt to create a buffer zone to try and stop the cross-border operations that have been happening, and that this war of aggression will be the end of Putin, and you're killing it, bro?
And thank you, Jason Carpenter. You're killing it, Jerry. Killing it. And also, to answer your question, which is a really good one, I don't believe that this was meant to create a buffer zone, because if they wanted to do that, they probably could have done that with several battalions, or they really could have just started moving a slightly larger amount of forces into the area and really close to the border. I believe that this was actually an attempt to try and either divert Ukrainian forces from the front lines, or an actual full-blown attempt to try and retake Kharkiv, although it was poorly planned and once again poorly executed, like most everything the Russians do. So that would be my opinion on it. I wouldn't really say that they were just trying to create a buffer zone, because the buffer zone isn't that large, and it also doesn't include the typical area that the Free Russian Army is moving into, which is Grivoron. We've seen nothing happening from the Russians in that area. It's entirely kind of centralized around the Kharkiv area, and also possibly trying to threaten the Ukrainian rear lines at Kupiansk and Kupiansk-Veslovy. So going off of that, I would have to say this was actually an offensive that was supposed to have teeth to it, but once again, the Russians completely underplanned and were underprepared for what they were going into, and it's already started to fall apart at this moment. But with that, thank you so much once again for the amazing support, Jason Carpenter, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to be able to run this news day in and day out. We say this time and time again, but we really do run this thing ad-free and sponsor-free, and many of y'all who clicked on tonight would see that there were no ads and that there are no sponsors either. There are none on the stream. It runs entirely off of viewer support like yours, Jason Carpenter. And I got to thank you massively tonight for helping this channel to keep on running, because you're one of the people who make it possible for the tens of thousands, really the 70 to 80,000 people who watch this stream nightly to be able to see it. You're helping us to be able to make a job out of this and keep on doing what we believe is the best job we could ever have. A dream job for us, and also hopefully something y'all all really enjoy. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Jason Carpenter. I hope that addressed that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Peace with War, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Peace with War, for that support. He says, how much support would Ukraine need to start a new counteroffensive? Troops/armored vehicles, ? And is the West willing to provide such support? And you guys do a wonderful job in LSA. And thank you very much.
And thank you, Peace for War, for saying that we do a wonderful job. We try our best. And also, to answer that question, it really depends on where that offensive would be, and also what their objectives would end up being. So let's say that they tried to punch through Robotny again towards Melitopol. They would most likely need hundreds of tanks, hundreds, maybe even 1,000 infantry fighting vehicles. They would probably need a large amount of artillery and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of artillery shells for a short offensive of several weeks. They would probably need a decent amount of air support as well, and not only that, a higher amount of electronic warfare systems, and maybe even trophy systems as well to protect their armored vehicles. And not only that, a large amount of small arms, ammunition, and rifles, although they largely have the rifles under control, to equip the infantry. It would take a lot. It would probably take billions and billions of dollars and loads of equipment to be able to make that kind of an offensive possible, because the amount of vehicles that would be needed, the amount of troops that would be needed, you would need tens of thousands of troops to be able to conduct an effective offensive. It would be a pretty high amount, but it really depends on where the offensive happens and how much, how far the Ukrainians plan on going. So if we're in this area, that would be kind of the formula that you would use here: hundreds of tanks, maybe 1,000 infantry fighting vehicles, and tens of thousands of soldiers. But in another area of the front line, like in Kherson, it would be a completely different requirement. The amount of troops that you would have in this kind of offensive in this area would be a lot less. But you would need a lot more support equipment. So you would have to see a lot more support in the logistics field, like for example, hovercraft, bridge erectors, which is what they're technically called. I know someone's about to laugh about that. And it's completely well deserved, but that's what they're called. They're called bridge erectors, and also a whole bunch of other kind of logistical. I guess you could say vehicles and really groups, so that way you can end up fording the Dnipro River successfully and get to the other side and get your small force over there. Because it wouldn't necessarily take a big force to threaten Russian forces in this area. It would actually just take a small one that's well supplied and well equipped and would be able to get over the river efficiently. In other places, like, for example, let's say up in the Donetsk area, or the Luhansk area more so, near Kupiansk, these kinds of offensives would once again require a large amount of armored vehicles, much larger than even the area of Rabotne, because these areas up here are almost completely devoid of forest, and not only that, are wide open plains, meaning that armored warfare would really be the king of this area, and not only that, you would once again have to factor in the provision of electronic warfare systems, and also trying to outfit these vehicles with some kind of a trophy system as well, so that way they would not immediately be lost due to Russian anti-tank fire. So it would cost a lot of money, and when I say it would take billions of dollars, a lot of people go, oh my goodness, that's so much money. But people just don't get an idea. I don't think a lot of people know the scale of how much wars cost. Wars are incredibly expensive. There's not really a lot of profit to be made in wars for a lot of people. And that's something else that a lot of people get wrong, is that defense companies make a decent amount of money when a war is going on, but a lot of that money is looked at as a waste, because while the company may be making that money and may end up, making a profit off of it, all of the equipment, like for example, all of the steel that's put into the tanks, or all of the man hours and effort, it ends up getting lost on the front lines. Most of it ends up being destroyed. So it's a complete loss for the economy, because you don't really get the same thing out of it that you would, say, building a truck on the domestic end for commercial use. And so wars end up costing nations a lot of money. They're wildly expensive. Like if we go back and pull up, let's see here, how much did World War II cost? And let me see here. So, World War II, and let's see, adjusted for inflation in today's world, but when was that published? Because inflation has gone up a lot over just the past few years. This was published in, it doesn't say. It does not say. How sad is that? Let's see here. Everyone's in agreement, though, that World War II cost about $4 trillion, so about $1 trillion per year in modern money. It's probably more than that. It's probably around $5 trillion now. So about $1.2 trillion was spent annually on World War II for the United States. That is $1 trillion to $1.2 trillion. If y'all want to know how much the government spends nowadays in discretionary spending, it's about $1.2 trillion, I believe. And then about $2.2 trillion of that's non-discretionary spending, where they just have to spend it as required by bill or act or statute. So you can get the idea. Wars are unbelievably expensive. And the war in Ukraine is not a cheap one. Although this is actually quite cheap to speak about, because talking about billions of dollars to beat the Russians versus trillions of dollars to defeat Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in World War II, it's a pretty bargain price for a major war to end up being won. So going off of that, it's not a lot, but still, for the average person, it sounds like a large amount when you're talking about how much wars cost. But war is war. Wars aren't cheap. And that's usually why people don't want to fight wars, because it's devastating to economies. Really, it's always been historically devastating. I don't know why. I always think about that, and now I kind of have to go on a rabbit hole down this. People always think wars are good, they make money for people at the top. They really don't. If you look at Britain after World War II, Britain was strapped. I don't know if people know this or not, but the royal family actually had to pay for the wedding gown that they had in the coronation, actually before the coronation, in ration stamps. I'm not even kidding. That's how poor the United Kingdom was, is that even the royal family, and this wasn't just for public show, the royal family was actually using ration stamps from ration books in World War II, because there was literally no money, no wealth to really be had at all in the war. The Germans didn't come out of the war well either, and if it wasn't for the Marshall Plan and massive amounts of U.S. investment in West Germany probably would have never economically recovered, and if it did, it would have been a very weak economy. France is largely the same. France was derelict after the war and ended up using, funnily enough, a lot of German tanks at the end of the war. So the French army from, I think, 1945 to 1948 was made up of Panthers, Tiger tanks, and a whole bunch of other crap that they just took from the Germans because they didn't have the money to start building their own army. That's how poor the French government was by that time. Every government was like that. The only country that came out of World War II doing well was the United States, because we ended up getting a lot of kickbacks off of the Lend-Lease. And also, not only that, the war hadn't really wrecked us much, because while we had spent a lot on it, a lot of that stuff ended up coming back to the United States. For example, the trucks, which we used to an unbelievable extent in the United States, and it really ended up boosting the economy. And on top of that, the major industries that grew out of supplying the world with equipment also continued to thrive after the war, and continued to find that their markets were not only in the United States, but also overseas as well. So that was one of the few historical instances where a country ended up benefiting from a war. Beyond that, most countries usually suffer from war, even if they end up winning. So with that, I hope that does address that well, but thank you so much once again for the support and asking a really good question. And I hope I was able to give an idea of what an offensive would probably look like in the future. But with that, it is time for us to move on into the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving into the news, the massive news that came out of Sevastopol. And so, Matthew, what is the final question of this segment?
All right, so this one goes to Rob Horvath, who put in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you for bearing with the YouTube system, Rob, because apparently it was giving you a hard time, and apparently you're not the only one. So YouTube being YouTube, I'm telling you what. But thank you very much for the support and also bearing with it. He says, I couldn't write anything, but it's for a round of pierogies.
Hey, thank you so much, Rob Horvath, for the massive donation, the massive support to this channel, and helping us to get some pierogies, because pierogies are delicious. Matthew is an okay fan of them, but I love pierogies. I think they're incredibly good, and I love the ones that you can get from the store. I don't know if homemade ones are even better, but the ones from the store are bussin'. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you helped to make this possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and keep eating them pierogies. You know what I mean? And also, sorry to hear about the problems that you had, Rob Horvath, because we have heard that a lot of people have been running into problems with YouTube. That's why super chats have gone down in number, and also donations to Sunday night fundraisers have gone down in number, because apparently YouTube is having some issues with processing payments from people, either to fundraisers or to us. And I hate to hear that you ran into that problem, and I just hate to know that that's happening in general. But still, thank you for powering through with it and persevering and helping to support the channel, because whether YouTube's having issues or not, the support is always massively appreciated, because it helps us to make this thing possible. We do this as a living, and you're helping us to be able to do this as our full-time job. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, another thing that I like to point out is, if you're having problems with YouTube and you do want to support the channel, you can go down to our Patreon. I guess that's kind of our circumvention of YouTube's problems. Y'all could go down to the Patreon and support us there, because we are greatly appreciative for y'all's support on Patreon. And a huge shout out to everyone who's already on Patreon. But with that, it is time for us to...
Also, by the way, Enforcer, let's see here. Let me double check and make sure I'm reading it properly. I don't want to skip over anything. I am on the Defense Internet NOTAM Services website, notams.faa.gov, and I have found the NOTAM. It's buried in there. I'm not sure if they intentionally did that, or I'm just not familiar with the system, probably the latter. But it is indeed confirmed. It's a NOTAM A1922/24. It says the Russian Federation plans to conduct rocket firings. The impact area says Oakland. And it also goes through all the information we've already looked at, and it appears to last for about 10 days or so. And it's not on the actual normal NOTAM site. It's on the defense site. So it's a little bit different here. And it says for DoD flight only. So I'm not sure why there's a distinction for that, but there you go. It's apparently confirmed.
And can we get a link to that so I can show that quickly here on air?
Yes, let me copy and paste that. Hopefully it brings to the same thing. Otherwise, I can show you how to get to it. Let me go to Discord. Still getting used to my new setup, by the way. You got to drag that over there and copy and paste. There you go.
And there we go. And we'll go and pull that up really quickly. Your session has expired, or an invalid request has occurred.
So go to the main page here where you can search. Just click on the logo.
Let's see here.
In the middle.
That's doing nothing.
Or just go to the website, notams.faa.gov.
notams.faa.gov. This has got to be a government website because it looks like garbage, and I can't get to that either. So
Punch in Defense Internet NOTAM service on Google.
Defense Internet NOTAM service. This one?
Yes.
So let's get to that.
All right, and press agree and type in that white box up top. Punch in KZAK
This one?
and view NOTAMs.
All right.
All right, now go up there to the, well, actually scroll down and look for A1922. There should be down a couple, like maybe 10 or 15.
Let's see, A1922, A1922, A1922. Let's see here. I think we're getting close. There we go, A1922 right here. Oh yeah, look, it says it right there. The Russian Federation plans to conduct rocket firings, impact area within the Oakland Arctic Oceanic FIR or something. So let's see, can we click on the check mark on that one, and will it like show us a map?
All it'll do is it'll bring you to the actual like dedicated page for it, but there's really no more information on that page. It's literally that simplistic, and I think that may be on purpose.
Interesting. So, but it is confirmed now that there is going to be an exclusionary zone or a NOTAM area right outside of San Diego and south of the Baja Peninsula for Russian rocket testing or rocket firings. We don't know what kind of rockets.
Pretty vague.
Yeah, it's very vague because we've actually heard some rumors that this may be the re-entry of some parts of the Soyuz rocket that they plan on firing, but that's highly unlikely because usually those are deorbited over the area of Kazakhstan or over Siberia. So the impact area also being right off the coast of California is a little weird, and also on top of that, the Soyuz pods or the Soyuz capsule, when it re-enters the atmosphere, it's not made to float like some re-entry capsules of the United States are. Theirs have no flotation devices whatsoever and usually end up landing once again in Siberia or in Kazakhstan. So the fact that this impact area is anywhere near the United States western seaboard and also near the area of the west coast of Mexico is leading us to believe that this is not some kind of a Russian Soyuz rocket launch. But once again, we don't have a lot of information about it. We're going to have to look into this a little bit more, but there is a NOTAM notice according to the notam.gov website.
Also, by the way, the first sentence, which is basically the only information we have on it, literally says the Russian Federation plans to conduct rocket firings. I don't think they would write that in that manner unless they literally meant they're firing rockets from that position. If it was something having to do with the Soyuz rocket or something like that, I think they would specify that specifically because they know people monitor this and they're going to see this and it's going to be construed the wrong way. So the way it's written, it sounds like it is what we think it is.
It does certainly appear so. And also, let's see what the other NOTAMs are. Let's see. This one's, let's see. These are just
now, this becomes a big story tomorrow, by the way. Like, just know we were on this thing first, thanks to Kurt and Heather, by the way, because if this becomes a big one, which I think it might, I haven't seen nobody else report on this just yet.
Also, look at most of these NOTAMs. They just list off the coordinates and they give no explanation. And then we have right here, operating between Hawaii, position reports are required. Let's see, these waypoints have been incorrectly published as non-compulsory. And so that one explains what it is. And that's fairly mundane. You know, it's just waypoints being off, and they're saying, you know, make sure to report your position manually so that way the airspace can be controlled and collisions don't happen. Let's see. And then another one, really saying the same thing, but apparently for different waypoints. And let's see here, transmitting, estimated, let's see. This is the only one, this is the only one that does not sound mundane. It just says the Russian Federation plans to conduct rocket firings, period. The rest of them seem to be incredibly normal. It's just your normal mundane kind of NOTAMs, either telling people to make sure to manually say waypoints or closing off airspace for certain reasons, like aircraft maneuvers and things like that. So this does appear to be completely accurate. And not only that, this is on a federal government website. This is from the Defense Internet NOTAM service of the Air Force, Army, Navy, and the Marine Corps. So going off of that, and also considering that the website looks like garbage, which means that it has to be a federal government website, this is entirely verified. So with that, hope that does address that well. We were able to get down to this and verify it. And also, I love, Matthew, that we were able to verify it because there were some people squealing in the chat, this isn't verified, I haven't heard this on CNN or Fox. And guess what? We're better than CNN or Fox, so get with the program. But moving on from that, and my diss of CNN and Fox for about the 90th time on this show, it is now time for us to move on down to Sevastopol because we are actually way behind schedule. We still have a lot to cover, and it's already been an hour and 40 minutes of news. But moving on into Sevastopol, we have been able to see at Belbek airfield that there has been serious damage that was caused. We were able to see the tarmac before and 2 MiG-31Ks that were stationed at the airfield, and after, showing that the MiG-31Ks have been obliterated, and it also appears that there has been additional damage to some kind of a Russian base facility just south of the pad. Also, we were able to get additional info showing right here more damage at the airbase. This is a much more high-definition picture from IGMER showing the quality of the impacts. And we can see that these MiG-31s have been obliterated. We can also see some other impacts around the area. It looks like this Su-34 may have been damaged. And we can also see what appears to be another MiG-29 or a... well, actually, that does appear to largely be a MiG-29 SMT that was obliterated as well, meaning that 4 aircraft are confirmed destroyed and 1 appears to have suffered some kind of damage. This is one of the most devastating attacks that we have seen so far on Russian forces anywhere within the war, or really the Russian Air Force anywhere in the war, and this is wildly impressive. Meanwhile, we got to see that the Russians were engaging a kamikaze boat outside of the area of Sevastopol. They did this, from what I can tell, with an Mi-35 today, and here's the clip. The Mi-35 is flying in and is firing off the Gush gun that it has mounted below the gunner's seat. And it sounds like he just said that they hit it. And then they're now circling around. You can see the drone right out there. And we now hear the door gunner firing at it. And the door gunner sucks. He's like missing every shot. Like, we now see them. Oh, so, you know what's stupid is that the guy said yes, meaning that he hit it, and then it's still on the move. It's like, did you hit it or not? Like, it's like, do you just say that to say it? We see them continuing to fire. This is taking a lot longer than you'd think. It looks like one of those machine gun rounds did impact the drone, though. And that's the end of the clip. I don't really know if they ended up taking out the drone or not, because almost everything they shot missed, but still interesting to see. Moving on from that and out of the area, it's now time for us to move on over into the area of our location unknowns. And we have a couple. We were able to see some soldiers of the 22nd right here firing a Bulgarian 2-stage RPG, which looks nuts. I've never seen an RPG warhead like that, but I think that looks pretty cool. But anyways, moving on from that and on to our next bit, we also got to see 2 peons that were on the move as well. We see them
on the Chad music. Gotta love that.
But anyways, you can see them on the move. Those things are pretty cool. We see them rolling on along right here. And then the clip ends, of course, really soon. But still, it was a beautiful clip. And it's time for us to move on to the Russian casualty reports, because today, they were quite high. Ooh! Oh,
my goodness, man. 1,500 likes seems to be the new average these days. That's crazy.
1 Bobcat skid steer was lost. But beyond that, 1,520 Russian troops were wounded and killed, along with 30 armored personnel carriers, 93 supply trucks, nearly 100 in a day, 19 main battle tanks, 27 artillery pieces, 13 drones, and 1 cruise missile. It was an unbelievable day today, and the losses were near record high in some categories and record high in others. Moving on from that and past this clip, because we're starting to run a little bit low on time for news, Terror Ops did their thing. You can go check out the clip if you want, link in the description below. But moving on down into the area of the battlefield of Bakhmut, we did get to see the Russians attempted an attack today, but notice the strong attempt. It did not succeed. Chad music ensues as we watch the Russians trying to fire on the Ukrainian positions from their deeply dug trench, and we now see them getting already plastered once they move out of the trench and towards the Ukrainian positions. We can see this massive gang of Russians right here, moving around the trench in a large group. No consideration for grouping whatsoever. In fact, they are squeezing onto each other, so I have a feeling that this will end poorly in a moment, and it did. And so we now know that the entire squad is probably wounded or dead, and the Ukrainians are continuing to lay them low. And oh my goodness. Man, this is some rough stuff right here. I mean, they're obliterating these guys, maybe even turning them into hamburger meat. Call this thing Hamburger Hill.
Terrible. Terrible.
Terrible stuff. Awful. We see here the smoke covering the trench after the failure. That's the end of the clip. But moving on from that and into our next one, we also got to see that more Russian forces got wiped out in an attempt to assault a Ukrainian position in this clip. There goes the Russians out of the back of the MTLB, and they're immediately getting schmacked as soon as they get out of the MTLB. You can see that a lot of them are hitting the ground, a lot of them are getting hit with nades, and this attack literally fell apart as soon as they left the APC. Now the MTLB is probably going to end up running over a few as it's making its way out. And we see the Russians getting hit with another nade. Man, these guys just don't learn. Like, it's been 2 years, and they're still grouping up, and they're still doing stupid things, like letting the infantry hop out with the opened door facing the Ukrainians, where it's pretty much a turkey shoot at that point.
Man, the commanders don't last long enough to teach the lessons to the new guys. They get knocked off, then the new guys come in, and the new commanders come in, and they're like fresh meat, like they have no clue.
But man, the eternal guidance always remains. Two group.
Oh, two group.
Man,
two group, yeah, they only get 2 of you at a time.
Man, everyone in Russia knows two group, but no one else knows anything like don't group up and don't face the APC towards the enemy when you open up the door. But with that, we also got to see that a barned MTLB got knocked out today near Chasiv Yar as well, which is kind of interesting to see. But moving on from that and out of the area of Bakhmut, it's now time for us to move on down into the area of Novobakhmut, where we did get to see that the T-90M got damaged and knocked out today by Ukrainian forces. There's the T-90M. When you see the FPV drone getting ready to slam that round right into it, and the T-90M cooks off. Another T-90M lost.
Destroy them in 2 groups, 2 groups.
They're blowing them up, Bliat. They're killing them all, Bliat. But it's like, there are no T-90Ms left, Bliat. And to all the people who said the Russians were going to pull out their better stuff later, where are they now? But moving on from that and on to our next clip at Arkhangelsk, we also get to see a Bradley from the 47th engaging Russian forces. Look at that camera stabilization right there. And look at that Bradley just chewing up those Russians. Pop, 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 pop. And the HE rounds are hitting and just blowing up. Blow up!
You know what they used to call the HE rounds back in the day?
What?
Michael Jackson used to call them
AP loaded. Switching to
Man, I'm telling you, those rounds have some punch behind them. I'm telling you,
man.
With a little chamone.
Dude, I was about to do that, man. Man, they hit them with a little bit of that chamone. But anyways, with that, we are now going to be moving on from that little clip right there and on into our next one down in the area of Avdiivka, where we got to see that another Russian T-80BV got knocked out right there. The losses are pretty nice today around Avdiivka, and we also got to see a T-80 being destroyed by the 110th Brigade. And we're going to be muting that because that sounds like lo-fi hip-hop beats. But we can see the FPV drone coming in right at the bottom of the turret of this T-80, and it's about to be toasting it, cooking it. And bing! And there we go. That T-80 is done for. Cooking up, roasting.
I'm telling you what, that NOTAM news, like, I will say this right off the bat. I just want to make this clear because I see some folks getting upset. All we know right now is there is definitely a NOTAM issued, and it says Russia's going to be conducting rocket firings somewhere off the coast of California. That's all we know right now. That alone is cause for some concern, no matter where it is, but we don't know all the details just yet. So no need to jump to conclusions just yet. It looks a little bit rough, but we'll have to see. I see some folks coming in and saying, "Oh, it's nothing. Hey, don't hype this up." It's like, well, we're not. We're just reporting the facts. We saw it on the government website just then.
Yeah, we're just reporting the facts, folks. Just calm down. Take a breather. It's okay. We always downplay everything on this channel, so don't worry. But anyway, so you can see the T-80 that was knocked out here. Beautiful to see. And with that, we're now moving on from that clip and down near Avdiivka, where we got to see more Russian assault sheds, or as we call them on this channel, the hulls. Oh, we're going to be muting that. But we can see the holes right there moving up. Some people, Matthew, we tell the news and then they want to attack us because we tell the news. Folks, we're just the news reporters here, y'all, and we made sure to verify it, so it's all good. Like, you know, like sometimes the news is gonna sound great. I mean, honestly, it's probably nothing. But you know, if it's freaking out, don't worry, stay calm. You know, what's the worst that could happen? A nuclear holocaust? I mean, and at that point, you probably won't have to worry about it for more than 7 minutes. So, you know, look on the bright side. But we can see here that the Russian tanks are moving forward. And also, by the way, y'all, I'm not like other YouTube channels that talk about everyone's going to die in a nuclear hellfire. That is, the chances of that every single day is like 0.1%, or less, far less than that. So, you know, don't believe I'm saying that. If that's what you're thinking I was saying, no one's going to die in a nuclear hellfire. Don't worry, everyone will be fine. But with that, we can see here the howls continuing to move forward. And we see another one up here be smoking the meat, like Mark Zuckerberg out in his backyard. He's about to plug Sweet Baby Ray's like he's getting paid.
You know, we're going to put some of that Sweet Baby Ray's on it, you know what I mean? So we're going to smoke those meats in the smoker. You know, they call it the Russian Haas, a smoker.
Man, they're going to put that Sweet Baby Ray. Like, dude just said that like 9 times. Like, no one caught it the first time. Oh, and we can see the tank firing off its smoke grenades from the top of the cage, now blanketing the field so that way the other wounded and stricken Haus can try and move away.
You know something I don't understand? I'm not saying this isn't a possibility referring to the NOTAM situation again. I see a couple of people running around like reposting this post about the Soyuz rocket. And I mean, that's a possibility. It could maybe be that. If maybe they just worded it kind of odd in the NOTAM. But like people are jumping to such conclusions saying it's total fake news. The NOTAM's not rockets. It's like we don't really know anything yet. We haven't gotten a statement from DOD or anyone to jump to conclusions like that. We can't even say it's Russia trying to do a provocation really just yet. We don't know that either. But I noticed here that it looks like a second NOTAM might, I want to put an emphasis on might, have been issued around maybe Norway and maybe Finland. Let's see. And perhaps maybe even Hawaii, but that's very unconfirmed. So that's just what I'm seeing here. But I have to do some looking because it's kind of complicated to search those up. But it looks like there could be more than just one.
But one thing I will have to say that's weirdly worded about that is if it's a Soyuz rocket, they're not testing it. The Soyuz rocket has been around for decades. That would not be a test. It would say that is a NOTAM zone for falling debris of the Soyuz rocket. They wouldn't say that the Russians plan on conducting rocket tests. That's an entirely different context there.
It doesn't say anything about a test at all. It just says they're firing rockets.
That is so vaguely worded. Yeah, I mean, that is so vaguely worded, you really can't make anything out of that, can you?
Yeah, it's just very vague. I don't think they would have worded it like that, though, for no reason. Unless somebody's just being lazy and, you know, forgot to type a word.
I mean, who knows? I mean, the only time will tell. And we'll have to see what happens over these next 10 days, but there is a NOTAM that has been declared near that area. Moving on from that, and on up into the area of Kyiv, it's time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 16th of May. And dagnabbit, the speech is short, but that is fine. We will make it work. Without further ado, here is the speech.
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні в першій половині дня Харківщина, передусім оборонні питання і захист людей. Провів у Харкові засідання Ставки, головком, командувачі за напрямками, керівники сектору безпеки, ГУР, Служба зовнішньої розвідки, СБУ, Державна прикордонна служба, МВС, керівники Харківської області. Тобто всі аспекти ситуації. Детально щодо бойових дій на Харківщині та захисту людей, наших позицій, потреб підрозділів, які захищають наші позиції. Зараз завдяки нашим силам, нашим заходам вдалося додати впевненості напрямку Вовчанську. Але російські обстріли не припиняються. Загрози є. Сьогодні, зокрема, був поранений керівник адміністрації Вовчанську. Наші контрударні дії тривають і в інших районах в прикордонні Харківщини. І наших результатів у відбитті штурмів, у знищенні окупанта має стати більше. Росія намагається розширити війну, супроводжує це незмінно пустими словами про мир. Ми повинні примусити Росію до реального справедливого миру всіма засобами. Наш захист від штурмів та ударів, при цьому він вирішальний. Були сьогодні на ставці також доповіді щодо подальших намірів окупанта. До усіх варіантів ми готуємось. Сьогодні теж детально проаналізували ситуацію на Донеччині на відповідних напрямках. Покровський, Краматорський, інші. Там найбільша кількість бойових зіткнень, найбільш жорсткі обставини. Звичайно, цей напрямок не залишаємо без уваги. І детально працюємо з партнерами, щоб дати, зокрема, Харківщині, Донеччині, Сумщині та іншим нашим регіонам більше базового захисту, а саме систем ППО та достатньої далекобійної зброї. Вже по поверненню в Київ говорив з прем'єр-міністром Польщі Туском про наші потреби, про системи Петріот, які могли би відчутно змінити ситуацію на Харківському напрямку. Окремо обговорили російські терористичні удари по наших регіонах в західній частині України, ту загрозу, які удари по газовій інфраструктурі несуть всім у Європі. І не лише нам, але й нашим сусідам. Ми маємо спільно цьому протидіяти. Я хочу також сьогодні подякувати Данії. Є новий оборонний пакет – 750 мільйонів євро. Це посилення нашої ППО, посилення нашої артилерії, вчасне рішення. Дуже дякую. Ще одне. Мав честь сьогодні особисто відзначити наших воїнів, які захищають саме харківські напрямки. Дуже важливо. 57-ма, 42-га, 92-га бригади, воїни спецпідрозділів ГУР. Дякую кожному з вас, хлопці. І кожен наш солдат, кожен сержант, кожен офіцер. Хоробрість кожного визначає спільну долю. Я дякую кожному, хто робить все, щоб наша держава вистояла. І дякую кожному в світі, хто допомагає. Слава Україні!
And
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 813 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that moves us on into segment number 2, where we get to talk to all of y'all. We get to talk to y'all about anything y'all want to talk about, whether it be hood reviews, whether it be your hometown, whether it be history, food, anything, the war even. We will talk about it. We will talk about anything and everything. But nevertheless, it is time for us to talk about one last question. A question that has been asked of all of y'all, something that we were really interested in and want to know. What are y'all thinking on it? What are y'all thinking on it? And Matthew, take it away.
All right, so before we get to that poll question, I just want to quickly say we do have another piece of massive breaking news here, by the way. This is very fresh, and we don't have a lot of details about this either, but it is confirmed to have happened. We are hearing that the Russian port of Novorossiysk in Crimea has been attacked by a massive Ukrainian aerial and naval drone swarm, and over 20 plus explosions have been reported. Very big explosions, by the way. And also, we are hearing that Ukraine has sent another drone swarm to strike a southern Russian oil refinery, and they've set it on fire as well. So that's a huge refinery. It has about 3.5% of Russia's total refining capacity in that strike being taken out right there. So some big news on both fronts. But right now, it's sounding like there might be a pretty big loss in Novorossiysk. I'm not going to say it just yet. We're going to save it because I'm not sure if I'm seeing this right or not. But it looks like one of Russia's administrative buildings might have been taken out. So I'm going to hold back from saying it. I don't want to get hopes up yet, but it looks like something major might have just happened. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that this is big news. We did cover right at the beginning of the channel that while we were live on air, there was explosions being reported in Novorossiysk, and now we are getting news that it was a massive attack that has occurred, and now larger damage may have been sustained. We believe that that damage is mostly going to be focused around the Vostochny Rayon, which is the naval moorings and harbor for the Russian Navy that is in this area. And we can actually see a large amount of Russian naval vessels, even in the satellite picture right here, and also a Rostov-on-Don class, well, actually a Kilo class submarine. So we may be hearing that there is some very serious damage that has been caused, but at the moment, all we know is that there's been major explosions and a major attack that happened on the port that has most likely obliterated the Russians in this area. But we will be making sure to check in on that a little bit later and double check and triple check that we have that correct. And also, Matthew, who the hell built the railroads out here in this part of Novorossiysk like it's a Lionel train layout? Look at this. He did like a figure 8. Like, why? Like
That figure 8 might have been a little bit disrupted after this attack, it seems.
man, they might be needing a bit of oxygen. It's just like, oh, Lord, you give me some oxygen. Because they're going to be blown away. I mean, they might be running out of oxygen with all the fires that'll be happening in this area. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And there's a Hilton Garden? What? Wait, is this like a legit Hilton? No way.
Oh, look at that.
There's like a Hilton in Novorossiysk. And look. Wait a minute, no way. That's what it looks like.
That's pretty
out there.
nice.
That's actually kind of like bougie, I'm not going to lie. Why in the world would Hilton build a hotel in Novorossiysk of all places? It's actually really nice, I'm not going to lie. Like, why though? That doesn't look that
man.
good.
That's beautiful though. Like, no, I mean that's actually pretty good looking. That water's nice.
Man, the water's nice, but that hill over there that's been stripped of all vegetation, I don't know about that. But still, I mean, the hotel itself is incredibly nice, though. I mean, it's wildly nice. How much did it cost? $130 a night to stay here, so that's about the price I think of a Hilton Garden here in the United States, or really a Hilton in the United States. But whack, weird. And then they have the hotel.
Get a front review of the explosions, I guess, that Ukraine just sent in. I guess they thought it was fireworks, but it's not Disney World.
Man. Yeah, dude. So there is like fireworks, but not Disney. That sounded really good. I like that one, man. Good one. But look at this, man. Hotel Novorossiysk right next door at $50 a night. You get like the real Russian experience.
Oh yeah,
Man, those
look at
pissed
that.
yellow
Used
walls.
bed.
Yeah, the pissed yellow walls. The lobby looking like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, that is pretty rough looking right here. And no oceanfront. Well, actually, they do have oceanfront views right there. But yeah, I think I'd rather be next door in the Hilton than the Hotel Novorossiysk. You know, it's a little rough. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well about the news in Novorossiysk. But we'll have to hold back from saying more because we don't know more. We only know less. But with that, it is now time for us to move on into the rest of what people have been talking about. Matthew, take it away.
All right, so the poll that we put up here, it says, do you think the NOTAM for the coast of California will turn out to be a major issue with Russia? 50% said it sounds like a Russian provocation to me. 19% said it seems serious, but I need the DoD to confirm. And 18% said no, it's probably mundane and nothing. And on this one, like I said, this is all speculation, and we just want to make that clear so that way tomorrow nobody's like, oh, you hyped it up for no reason. What are you doing? It was just speculation. Right now, we know very little. To me, though, if that turns out to be true, and that one-line sentence in the NOTAM that Russia plans on firing rockets near the coast of California, that's obviously a provocation, and to my knowledge, that'll be one of the first times that's ever happened. So I'll be curious to see how that's dealt with. But if it turns out to be nothing, well, we just had a little scare tonight for no reason, but, you know, the NOTAM says what it says. We'll just have to wait and see. But, Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I mean, it's nothing to be scared of, really. I mean, I don't even think it's really that big of a scare. It's just a NOTAM, and it fills everyone with a lot of curiosity about what it is. But if anyone's actually seriously concerned about it, I wouldn't be, because we don't really know enough about it to be concerned in the first place. We just know that it goes down, I think, around the area of well, actually, I think it doesn't even go down that far. I think it goes down about to the area of, hell, I wouldn't know. There's some island that they had on the map that I'm not seeing out here, but beyond that, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. It's just something of curiosity. We don't know what it is, and we'll look into it and see. I mean, it might be something to worry about, might be nothing to worry about, but right now we just know that the NOTAM's been declared. Now, I will say this, though. Anyone who's out there saying that a NOTAM hasn't been declared and that's fake news is a straight-up liar, and I'm not even going to mince words with that because we were able to back that up on the NOTAM on a government website that only issues NOTAMs. We were able to back up that that one does exist. So if anyone's out there right now saying that it doesn't exist and it's all hype and we're faking it, those people are flat out liars because we were able to verify it on a government website. So, you know, there's not really a lot more that we can do to verify it. And if people hate to hear it, I mean, sorry, cry, I guess. But, you know, there's not really a lot more that I can say about that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we are now moving into our super chat questions. And with that, our first one here is going to go to Sergeant Carnage. He's causing carnage out here. And thank you very much, Sarge, for the $20 support. He says, question from the chat.
And thank you so much, Sergeant Carnage, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to send a question to the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the question from the chat is going to go to Stephen Gerard, who says, I got one for you guys. I heard from a major news source that NATO is considering sending in advisors to Ukraine, and can you guys check that story out?
I have checked out that story today. We just don't really talk about that much on the channel because we found that people usually don't like to hear about what might happen. They only like to hear about what will happen. And so going off of that, I would have to say, yes, that is something that may be possibly happening. We have heard that that is probably one of the things that may certainly happen moving on months into the future, is that a large amount of Western armed forces will arrive in Ukraine as instructors and help to train the Ukrainian army at home instead of transporting all of the Ukrainian soldiers to a foreign country and then training them there, like the UK, France, Spain, Germany, and so on, or Poland. So yes, we do know that that is something that most likely will happen. We have heard a lot about it, not just from a single news organization. It's actually been from a lot of them, and it appears to be something that really is going to be making it into its final stages and actually be executed on. So that is something that we know will most likely be a reality here in the near future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Sergeant Carnage, and supporting that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to JC Atkins, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, JC, as well, for supporting the channel. And he says, I wish I could be here more often, and keep up the good work. And hi, folks, from your favorite, rarely seen anymore, LSA Navy NCO.
Hey, it's our LSA Navy NCO! And I gotta thank you so much for the support, JC Atkins. And we have been wondering, where have you been? We always wonder that whenever viewers are missing. Of course, we can't mention all of them, because, you know, there's a decent amount of them that are always here, missing, but we still know when y'all are missing. We love to see when y'all return. And I gotta say, it's great to see you here tonight, JC Atkins. It is perfectly okay. Life is busy out there, and people gotta make sure to take care of themselves, especially after the week that I've been having behind the scenes. I will say it is very important to make sure to take care of oneself first before you try and care for other people, because you never know if those people are going to end up trying to backstab you or something else like that. So, you know, always make sure to just look out for yourself and take care of things that you need to take care of. And if that means you can't really watch the channel much, I completely get it, and I completely understand it. And I hope that things have been going incredibly well for you, JC Atkins, and that you've been hopefully getting things taken care of and doing incredibly well and been on the up and up. But nevertheless, it's great to have you here tonight, and I got to thank you so much once again for helping to support the channel that you enjoy incredibly well, because you're helping us to make this thing a reality, and I got to thank you greatly for that. We are greatly appreciative of it, and it's wonderful to know that you're still here and still watching this channel in some form or another, and that you haven't completely disappeared. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, good night to you, Sergeant Carnage. I say he's getting off for the night. So good night to you. And also, by the way, I sneezed, by the way. Someone said, what did Matthew do? I just sneezed. Sorry about that. But anyways, our next one is going to go to Panama Floyd, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Panama, for being a longtime channel legend, just like JC Atkins, and for putting in that $20 support. Panama says, I miss pre-Erdogan Turkey, and I miss the Olukanye. They actually wanted to be the EU. And I still don't know how they made it into NATO, and it must be a Cold War thing. And Enforcer, what say you?
And it is entirely a Cold War thing that Turkey made it into NATO, but it also was because Turkey was a very European-minded country at the time, more so closer related to France than anything. Because a lot of people, and I'll explain like the modern American mindset on the Middle East. The modern American mindset is that the entire Middle East is filled with people who look like Saudi princes, and every single one of them is an extremely devout Islamist or a Muslim. And the fact of the matter is that that historically is not true at all. The extremely devout or even radical Islamists have only come around since about the 80s. Before that, the Middle East was actually a very peaceful place and fairly prosperous at that as well, except for the area around Israel. That's been one area that's been embroiled in war ever since the Palestine Mandate ended in 1947, and it became Israel and Palestine, and then that whole thing happened. But beyond that, it was fairly peaceful in this area, and Turkey was probably the most secular country in the world, and it really still kind of is. Because one thing that y'all may not know is that back in the 90s, a woman in the Turkish, and you know, that will also blow a lot of people away, is that there were a lot of women in the Turkish National Assembly. One of them got arrested and put in prison, I believe, because they wore a hijab into the National Assembly. In the Turkish Constitution, is very closely written to the French Constitution, where it's not a division of church and state, it's a division of the church from the state, meaning that people can't even show any kind of religious symbology within the government without it being a crime, because it openly professes your religious affiliation. And so in Turkey, and that was a huge deal back in the 90s, and that was also it actually has a lot to do with like how Turkey has changed, and I'll try and explain it briefly because here's where the change happened. When Turkey started to modernize in the 1960s and 70s rapidly, and they started to grow as an economic power, a lot of people moved from the countryside into the cities to try and get into that economic prosperity. And not only that, a lot of economic opportunities were also drying up in the countryside as well, so they were kind of forced to the cities. This meant that there was a rapid urbanization of a lot of the cities inside of Turkey, and with these rural people came their more rural mindsets, not the kind of, I guess you could say, progressive mindsets that were had inside of the major cities like Istanbul or Ankara, where a lot of these people believed in the Turkish government system that existed since Ataturk. A lot of these people did not really know or care a lot about it, and so when they arrived in these major cities and started to really have a more larger say in how the Turkish government was run, they started to move into being a little bit more vehement about, I guess you could say, religious traditions inside of Turkey than the groups that had really been around forever running the Turkish government had been, since about 1922, I believe it was. And so when that change started to happen, that's when the rise of Erdogan began, because Erdogan is one of those people. He was actually a child when his family moved from the countryside and into the incredibly densely populated slums of Istanbul, where a lot of these country folks were moving in. And so with him and his family, he brought this kind of a new idea to Turkish politics. And because these groups of rural people were moving in such large amounts, he actually ended up winning the elections, because these people started to vote in much larger numbers and get a lot more politically active, much like city folks kind of naturally do. And so he ended up winning the election. He's really been in power since, because the landscape in Turkey hasn't really changed. And that's why it appears that Turkey's not like the old Turkey, is because of this massive population shift, or really the urbanization of Turkey that happened because of the 1970s and 80s. So I hope that explains at least the change in Turkey fairly well, because before that, Turkey was completely different. I mean, Turkey was literally a completely different country before Erdogan came into power, and also before that urbanization happened. It was like France. I mean, it was actually incredibly advanced. It was incredibly modern. It had a lot of the rights that people would think of nowadays. In fact, Turkey was, I believe, well, let me make sure to check this. And let's see. Let's see, allowed to vote in Turkey. Let me see here. So let's see. So in Turkey, just to put this out there, because a lot of other countries like Switzerland ended up giving women the right to vote, I think in the 1970s, Turkey gave the right to vote for women, and also the right to run for political offices in 1930. Which is incredibly early. I mean, of course, the United States, I think, did it in 1919. Well, I think we did a little bit later than 1919. Oh, no, it was 1919. But Turkey was not that far behind the curve. They were incredibly advanced for the time, at least as far as trying to keep up to date with Europe. So that's why they got into NATO, is because back in the day, everyone was like, well, they will be able to cut off the Russians at the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles from ever getting into the Mediterranean, meaning that NATO would largely have control of the Mediterranean in the outbreak of war. And not only that, they're not really that much different than any Western European country. They may as well be a Western European country just in the Middle East. So for that reason, let's bring them in. And now everything's started to be thrown on its head because of the urbanization in Erdogan. That's really the best way to explain the whole change that Turkey has had over the past few years. Also, Matthew, can you reread his super chat to make sure that I didn't miss anything there?
Yeah, he said, I miss pre-Erdogan Turkey, and they actually wanted to be EU, and I still don't know how they made it into NATO, and it must be a Cold War thing.
Yes, it was a Cold War thing, and also they did want to get into EU, and there was some kind of an issue, but they got into a customs union. And being in a European Union customs union may as well be the same thing as being in Europe. And a lot of people argue that it isn't. The European Union, a lot of people argue that it isn't, but they get all the trade benefits of being in the European Union without it being an official member. And so for that reason, they pretty much, as far as the European Union is concerned, which is an economic union, they may as well get all the benefits of being an EU member without being one. So I hope that does address everything incredibly well. And thank you so much, Panama Floyd, for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And I got to thank everyone who supports the channel, because it truly does mean a lot. It actually helps us to be able to do this as a job. And I got to thank you so much, Panama Floyd, for not only allowing me to go down a very interesting rabbit hole, but helping us to keep on doing it well on into the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, Enforcer, I've been looking here at the NASA firms map. Also, by the way, it's a really good way to verify information and news if you're seeing it and you think, I'm not sure if this is the case. If you go to the NASA firms map, that typically shows you if it's actually accurate. And it is heating up in Novorossiysk. And Enforcer, if you want to check that link in the Discord, by the way, it's a link to the firms map.
Let's see here. I think I can get to the firms. Oh my goodness, dude. Like, have you seen Mexico? What the hell is going on in Mexico? Like, oh my goodness.
Man, that's probably like fire pits or something like that.
Man, I think Mexico's on fire, man. Like, and also Alabama's kind of a little warm as well. What's going on here? Like, what's going on with this? Huh? There's a
man. Check out Novorossiysk though. Like, it's really hot over there.
There's a fire at the airport. Anyways, yeah, we got to get on over to Novorossiysk. We got to go check out the fires over there. So, dude, actually, there's not really a lot of fires in Ukraine at all, according to the firms. But let's go down to Novorossiysk and let's check.
Oh, it's heating up down there. Look at that.
Oh, so what's there? Let me go to the normal map and let's go see what's there, because that's actually a little ways away from the Vostochny Rayon, because that's actually
and
down...
also remember, by the way, those little red blocks, they're approximate, so they're not exact. So it may be a little bit over to the left or maybe right. And maybe actually over the port, so you never know. But it's sort of like in the general area.
That is true. That could entirely be on Vostochny Rayon, honestly, because it's about the size of it. But in that specific area, if we were just to go off of that, it appears to be on this factory right here. We don't know what this factory is. It's the Zavod Proletariat. So it's some kind of a commie factory. It pumps out commies, but nevertheless, we don't know what's actually been hit, but there is a massive fire that's happening right now in Novorossiysk, because it can be seen on the firms. So interesting, and I cannot wait to find out what actually got hit, because apparently the damage is significant. But also, Tangen Abiri, I mean, he put in something interesting. He said, mind you, the Swiss men voted for the women. And that's something interesting to bring up about Swiss politics that not a lot of people know about. It's probably the closest to a direct democracy the world will ever see in the modern day, because everything that is passed in Switzerland is generally put up to the public. Very little of the laws in Switzerland are actually passed by some kind of a congressional or parliamentary body. It usually just ends up being voted on with the elections that come around for representatives. Also, Switzerland doesn't have an actual president. They have a federal council, which is made up of multiple presidents. In each president, I think they have like 8 presidents, and each one serves a 1-year term. So it's a very interesting government system. Switzerland is actually a confederation. And some people are like, oh my God, it's the Confederacy. But no, it's not the Confederacy. It's just a confederation government, meaning that the cantons in Switzerland actually have more power than the federal government of Switzerland, which is a really interesting thing because every other government in the world that runs off of I guess you could say, a kind of like a republic system, it's the other way around. But in Switzerland, the cantons, which are more so their states, have more power than the actual federal government of Switzerland, which is kind of cool because when you move around Switzerland, you don't sit there and go, what's the federal tax look like? No. It's about the cantonal taxes because the canton can end up really taxing you to death or not, depending on which one it is. But anyways.
Also, Enforcer, can you go back to Novorossiysk, by the way, on the actual map right here and look closer? Because I see a video here, and I think I might know exactly where it's been hit. Show that same spot we looked at just a minute ago.
This one, the Vostochnaya Rayon, or the Kami factory?
The Kami factory. See if you see large white, like fuel storage or oil storage tanks, because it appears to be that's what's been hit. See if you spot that around this area anywhere. Like huge white, like drum tanks.
No, that's like a sewage treatment thing there. I don't think that's it. These?
Yeah, I think that's them over there, those white-topped ones. That could be it, because I'm seeing a video here on Twitter, and it looks like those white-topped tanks are on fire, at least a couple of them.
Let's see here. Did you repost that on our account?
Yes, it's at the top.
Oh, buddy! Whoop, whoop. Yeah, we can geolocate that one. So let's take a moment to geolocate. Okay, so there are towers, there's trees, and then there's the storage silos. Let's see if we can figure out which way he's oriented. So he's not in these allotments because he's a couple of floors up inside of a building. So that means he could be in this building right here, which is possible. But those certainly look like the silos. And there are towers nearby. See the little towers with the lights that would be on them? Those are present. So that does appear to be where the fire apparently is at the moment, is somewhere around these oil silos in the center of Novorossiysk. That's actually a good bit of ways, though, from where the fire markers were, which were over at Kami Factory. These are almost on the other side of the port. But nevertheless, that is a confirmed impact from the Ukrainian drones, and I'm sure there's more damage that's also been caused. It's just that we don't have any video evidence of it yet, because when Belbek got hit, we got confirmation the next day that an S-400 radar had been destroyed, but then it was today, 2 days later, that we found out that MiG-31Ks and an Su-34 had also been completely destroyed on the tarmac as well from the strikes. So, going off of that, good job, Matthew. Great investigative journalism right there, and thank you for sharing. What?
Also, I was looking at the firm's map here. There appeared to be an inland strike as well. You'll notice there's a fire on the firm's map, sort of back to where that figure 8 track was that we were looking at. And based on another video I'm seeing here on our Twitter page from Astra, it looks like there is a confirmed hit sort of off the port itself and more into the mainland, which seems to be where that fire is showing up.
So let's see here. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, there are certainly fires. There is one near the figure 8, which actually looks to be right over an industrial area right here. Do we know what kind of industrial area? I don't think we'd ever get an idea of what kind of industrial area that is. But then there was one even further in that you were talking about, which is up here. It's actually a fairly sizable one as well. But it's up in the town of Verkhnebakansky. And this appears to be directly on top of some kind of a factory that's here. Or actually, it looks like these may be mines, some kind of mining facilities, but those may have been possibly hit because it appears that there's a big fire there as well. So good job, Matthew. Good job. You're really on top of things right now with this, and I got to say, very impressive work. Also,
Thanks. And also, what is that racket blowing up in the background? By the way, I keep hearing something banging and blowing up.
Like in real life or on video?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's coming from my screen or where. Let me see where the hell it's coming from.
It's probably your screen, because I have nothing running over here audio-wise.
Maybe it is mine. I gotta figure out where the hell it's coming from, but never mind.
Matthew's just got the sound of hammers. He's like, man, what is that? It's like, man, that's the sound of hammers. But anyways, dude, you know something that's really wild, though? Like, looking at Europe, there's, like, no fires. Like, there's none. And then you go around the rest of the world, and, like, India is, like, embroiled in them. Everyone in Africa is dead. Like everyone in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I believe this would be, let's see, Namibia maybe? Let me check that. For some reason I cannot remember where. No, that's Zambia and Angola. Everyone down there is dead. And also half of everyone in Madagascar is dead as well. And then, I mean, good lord, dude. Like some of the fires in some parts of the world are nuts. Colombia, well, actually, that's Venezuela. I think Venezuela's on fire because everyone is killing each other for food. And then Mexico have no clue. Cuba apparently lost the Cuban Missile Crisis. They just caught themselves on fire. And also, interestingly enough, no fires in Haiti. I think they're too poor for firewood, but we'll have to find out when we go down there and talk to Barbecue. Maybe Barbecue has stolen all of the firewood, and that's why there's no fires in Haiti, because there's more fires in the Dominican Republic than there is over Haiti. But still, this is actually a really interesting map to look at, man. I don't know. I'm like getting fascinated by this thing. I'm like, huh, look at that. There's like fires. There's like a lot of fires in Alabama for no reason at all, and there's a lot of fires in eastern Nebraska as well. It's like, why?
I'd be curious to know. I'd be curious to know exactly what the satellite's picking up. Like, is it picking up everything from like a small campfire, or just the bigger fires? Like, is there a certain size parameter it's looking for, or what? Because I have a hard time believing that there's this many fires going on, like just in Alabama.
Yeah, I mean it's a decent bit, and also like down here near let's see, south of Alabaster, kind of near Calera, like there's a massive fire apparently in one of the limestone pits. It's like, what are these? Like, what is this? Like, I don't think there are large fires at the limestone pits often, or at all, for that matter. Like, what is there? I don't know. But I'd still be interested in knowing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I just find the fire map interesting. Don't y'all? Don't y'all find it interesting? Because I do. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on into our next one before I get obsessed over the firm's map.
All right, so our next one here goes to Butchie777, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. And they said, take a little live chat if you have time. And love you guys and the LSA community /cult.
Yeah!
To group.
And of course we're a cult. We have to be a cult because everyone is here for me. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the kind words. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel and wanting to see it keep on running. And of course, we will make sure to get that live chat sponsored by none other than you. And of course, we're always appreciative of you being here and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question here goes to Happy Dragon, who says, will y'all be covering the Putin and China meeting today? And Happy Dragon, I did cover that in the short war video earlier today, sort of briefly. It was really cringy. Like, Putin was over there basically on his knees with Xi Jinping, trying to get favors for Russia, and it was really cringy. Putin even almost came to tears at one point, talking about how much the Russians and Chinese are such brothers, and how they're so close and things like that. But like I said earlier, it's really an alliance of convenience. Russia has nobody else to turn to except for China, and that's why he's so desperate to chum up to them. So it is what it is, but it's just cringy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, the Russians and the Chinese are such friends and brothers. The thousands of border guards that died back in the 80s are rolling in their graves right now. It's like, friends, it's like we killed each other. And I mean, hell, over history, the Russians have treated the Chinese like garbage. Like, they have. Like, it's actually been really bad relations. That's why they say, the old saying goes, only Nixon can go to China. Because the Chinese were in such bad relations with the Soviet Union at that time, it was actually believed that a full-on war was going to break out in between the two. And that's why China started to buddy-buddy with the U.S., all of their full-on commies, because they were more scared of the other commies than they were the greedy imperialist capitalists. Which really puts into perspective, and that's another thing. That's another thing I just cannot stand about those whimsically minded communists, is that they sit there and say, if the world was controlled by communism, there'd be no wars. How many communist countries have gone to war with each other? Like, a lot. Like, Vietnam against China. China and Russia have border wars. They almost went to full-out blows with each other. North Korea has ended up having some pretty interesting border spats with both the Chinese and the Russians. Never really to the point of shooting each other, but still, every once in a while, they have had some. Not only that, like, just look around the world. Like, communism ends up creating as much wars as really any other mindset does. Or there are revolutions due to the oppressive tyranny that's caused by communism as well. And that's why I always find it so stupid. You have to actually be a really stupid, loopy-minded person to think that fascism or communism is the way forward, because both of them are some of the worst forms of governance that has ever been seen in the modern world. Like, a command economy would really work. Like, do you know how incompetent a normal government is, just like out here in the world? Like, the U.S. government, do you know how incompetent they are on like a daily basis? It's actually fairly incompetent. I mean, it's one of the best out there in the world, and it's like one of the most efficient. but still incredibly incompetent compared to what it could be at its peak. And then you sit there and go, yeah, let's give control to the government of all economic planning and also the execution of the economy on a daily basis. You are asking for the most inefficient economical structure to ever exist. It will fail. And the Soviet Union completely failed. I mean, hell, they had... Matthew, the Soviet economy was so bad, this is an interesting fact, that whenever you could actually buy products that were just made for, you know, I guess you could say private purchase instead of ones just made for people to be able to get to survive, they ended up having these things that were pretty much called tack-ons, where if you wanted to buy, say, like, a nice set of candles, you had to buy, like, this shitty seaweed in a can, just because they had to get rid of it somehow and keep the seaweed farmers in business. So it's like, how stupid. Like if you ever look at the Soviet economical system, it was stupid. It was absolutely asinine. And it's just a miracle that they even made it into the late 80s. Because when you sit there and watch, like, or listen or read about how the Soviet economy functioned, it's like, how in the hell did they do that? Like, how in the world did they even last that long? That's a miracle in its own right. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also another thing I have to say about communism before we move on, you know, it's just considering that I'm on it and now it's a rabbit hole. Communism is so unimaginative when it actually gets put into practice. There is no art, like there is no real art, which, you know, art is a thing, you know, you can like it or hate it or whatever, but there is really no art under communism unless if it's in furtherance of the state, which means that art is heavily censored and it really has to be in furtherance of some kind of government propaganda. Not only that, technologically, the Soviets were so unimaginative in what they did. There was never any innovation to try and create anything better unless if the West did it, and then they went, oh, we have to do something to try and beat the West. And usually they ended up failing miserably at that. Like, for example, I think the largest locomotive ever made in the world was the AA-12, which was made by the Soviet Union. Well, actually, no. Let's see. Largest Soviet locomotive. And let me see if I can find this. Yeah, it's the AA-20. This thing, which was huge. It was the biggest steam train ever, well, the steam locomotive, ever made in the world. And the whole reason that it was made was because the United States made our own. And let me see, because like a Soviet guy came to the United States, looked at ours, and went, we have to make one bigger to play it for no reason. And then they made this thing. I think ours was like the X404 locomotive. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Is that it? Let's see here. Nope, that's not it. Dang. Oh, it was some kind of an experimental train. We ended up not really using it much or at all, I think. But we just did it to try and test out a theory of how certain elements would work. But they went, oh, we have to build it. So they built one. And it was so big, Matthew, that when this thing moved over the rails, it actually ended up bending them out of shape. So everywhere this thing went, it literally destroyed the railroads behind it. And it was so big that if you tried to use a normal railroad switch, you know, where you like switch the tracks that this thing runs on, it would destroy the switch because it was so heavy.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and also, if there were any turns in the track, at any point, or as they call it, the road, in actual railroad terminology, if there were any turns on the road, unless if it was literally the most gradual and largest turn that could be had, the train would derail because it was so long and the entire wheelbase was so rigid because it was all on one unarticulated chassis for the large part, it would just literally pop right off the rail. And so you had this massive bulking train that weighed, and let me make sure I get this correct, because we got to get the weight correct on this thing. Where the hell's the weight? It's like, it was an unbelievable weight. So let's see, actual, we want to know the full weight of the train. It's a boil pressure, cylinder size. Dang, I can't find it. But it was massive. It was like tens of thousands of tons. And it was nuts. And they ended up scrapping it after a while because it was just that bad. And it never was usable. But that's another thing. Like, that's just a good example of the Soviets being unimaginative. Because the only reason they made it was because the United States made something like it, and they wanted to make the Soviet Union look like it was advanced and could do the same thing. So they ended up coming up with this. And they did that with everything. I mean, literally everything. The reason why they even made a jet aircraft was just so that they could look as advanced as the Germans or the rest of the West, like the British and the Americans. They wouldn't have made it if no one else made it. And so if you get a communist government or a centrally planned economy, it just ends up being unimaginative. It just retains the status quo because that's the easiest thing for the bureaucrats in charge of managing the economy to do. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And then even with that, like with communism in China, like it's so bad. Like communism is such a bad principle that China had to introduce limited forms of capitalism so that way there was some kind of economic motivator out there somewhere. And that started off in the 80s with them allowing black market trade. And then it moved on into the 90s when they created special economic zones like Shanghai. And that's finally when China had any kind of economic progress whatsoever, was when they started doing that in the 90s. If it wasn't for them introducing some kind of limited forms of capitalism with a communist government and a centrally planned economy still in China, they wouldn't be a successful government or a successful nation in the modern day at all either. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Walter A. Lakota, you would think it was a big boy, but there was something entirely different. But you know what? Let me go pull this up. One second. I will be able to find it doing this because it's a thing. I remember seeing it somewhere and I remember hearing about it. So one second. Let me look here because I know I'll find it. Let's see. Yeah, it's the Class 9000. That's it. What it is. The Class 9000. Here we go. Here it is. It was this thing. It wasn't the big boy. It was the Class 9000 right here. This is the direct inspiration for the AA-20 is this thing right here. It was the Union Pacific 9000, which was, I think, one of the biggest locomotives by tonnage that ever operated in North America. The big boy, though, is a lot more famous than the Challengers are as well. But this thing was the inspiration for the AA-20, which was stupid. Like, it was so stupid because I think, if I remember correctly, this thing wasn't even successful at all either because it was just too big, and they decided that it wasn't the greatest thing. But Union Pacific had an obsession with larger locomotives that required less crews because they operated the major Midwestern routes that were the longest compared to any other rail provider in the U.S. at the time. So they believed instead of having multiple smaller locomotives pull larger loads, they would just have one massive locomotive pull the entire load, which would reduce the amount of crews they had to train and pay, and that would greatly increase the profit margins for Union Pacific. But anyways,
unfortunately, I got some more news about the Novorossiysk attack, by the way. I'm seeing here, based on the videos I was looking at once more, and also the reports from on the ground, it appears that we were right on target. It appears those white oil drums that we saw there, which I believe is the Novorossiysk fuel oil terminal, and also the Transneft terminal was struck. So right there in that general area. Also, you'll notice the train station is right there, basically to the right of it as well. That's apparently what is indeed on fire. And it appears that also the NASA firm's map is slightly off.
And sweet, nice to know. And thank you for sharing that once again. And also, Matthew, I didn't even notice this the first time. You can actually see all the pipes that feed from these silos straight over the rail yard and then straight to this specific part of the port to refuel vessels. So you're dead on the nail. That is actually the refueling terminal for the port of Novorossiysk. So it appears to be that it was a major target that was triggered because now the Russian Black Sea Fleet operating out of Vostochny Rayon cannot refuel out of Novorossiysk. That ability may have been completely knocked out for them here tonight. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again, Matthew, for doing some amazing work right there in the background. And with that, it's time for us to get on into our next question.
All right, so our next one's going to go to another legend, Jocelyn White, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Jocelyn, as well, for that support. She said, thank you for the news and the rabbit holes, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for enjoying the news and the rabbit holes. Some people like the rabbit holes. Some people hate the rabbit holes. Sometimes people find them boring. Sometimes people find them interesting. But still, I thank you so much for appreciating and greatly enjoying the rabbit holes, Jocelyn White, because I love going down rabbit holes. And sometimes I just go on rambling about things, but I always find them to be interesting. And I pray when I do them that y'all find them interesting too, because, like, I say this time and time again, and it is very true. My family hates rabbit holes because I've been doing it ever since I was born. Like, I came out of the womb, and in the hospital, I was like, did you know that scalpels were actually first made? And, you know, they're like, shut up. They're like, stop, please. So they've been hearing it for like 22 years. But I still thank you so much, Jocelyn White, for really enjoying the rabbit holes and the news. And we will make sure to get a question from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this live chat question, sponsored by Josh, goes to AF Kaplan, who says, any updates on the condition of the Slovakian Prime Minister?
We haven't gotten any updates on his condition today, so I would believe that it's still serious and he's still undergoing some kind of surgeries or some kind of life-saving measures. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best we can. And thank you so much once again, Josh and White, for supporting this channel and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a 10 New Zealand, and thank you very much, Speedy Bang Bang, for that support. He says, sorry, I'm watching delayed later, but I just got a Twitter notification from the enforcer about the Novorossiysk oil depot, and does this mean that Russia will have trouble importing emergency fuel? And AMX10, isn't that pretty good? We're sitting here on stream, and I'm also on Twitter as well. You got the notification that was tweeted out. So I really got deep into geolocating where that was exactly and stuff like that, and that's a very good hit right there. Because like the enforcer said, that is the way the Russians refuel their ships at Novorossiysk port, and since that's apparently been hit and it's on fire in big style, that may be completely out. So we'll have to wait and see. But enforcer, what say you?
From what I would know, it wouldn't stop them from receiving fuel imports, but it will stop the Navy from refueling and operating out of Novorossiysk at the moment, because Vostochny Rayon is completely cut off now from any kind of fuel source. Let me make sure that we're saying that correctly. And there are certainly no fuel silos that are attached to Vostochny Rayon or any refueling pier here, so this is quite clear. This is where the Russian Navy would refuel their vessels, is at this pier here, and that's now been knocked out from having any fuel pumped into it. So at the moment, it won't stop them from being able to get any fuels into Russia, but it will stop the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Novorossiysk from operating entirely once they start to run out of fuel. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, and I love to know that you enjoy the unbelievable efforts of the Enforcer channel, because it is crazy that Matthew's on Twitter while he's on stream at the same time, because it makes us almost look like CNN, because we have updates coming out in one place as we're live on air talking about it on another. It only takes two people to run a major news network, folks. It doesn't take thousands. Come on. I challenge CNN and Fox to fire everyone but two people and run a show like this, because I think they would be able to. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address it well, and thank you so much, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, for being a legend and also helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, in the next ones are huge shout-outs to Andrea Fed, who put in a 10, along with BC Skyman, who also put in a 10 as well. And huge shout-out to both Andrea and BC Skyman, and thank you both very much for that support. And also, we had a 10 from Peter de Mestahaz, who says, NOTAM is on NOTAM's FFA government site.
And thank you so much for sharing that. We were able to find that, and I think that may have been thanks to your help that Maddie was able to find that earlier. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for helping us to find that little NOTAM deal, because NOTAMs are such a big thing, Matthew. I mean, like, think about it. They're telling us that there can be no TAM, period. Like,
no TAM.
TAMs?
No TAM.
No. It's like, TAMs? No. Anything else? Yeah. But TAMs? No. And so with that.
Or it could be not AM for not American.
Ooh, man. Get that, get them out of here. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to KG, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, KG, for that support once more. And he says, I'm pretty sure this is NOTAM a prank. As a drone/pilot, I have to watch and sometimes file NOTAMs, and also MOD wouldn't, or give notice, it would be Roscosmos, and this one makes no sense at all.
And I thank you for the support, and it may make sense or it may not make sense, but the source is directly from a federal government website, so we can't really discredit it because it's from a government source, and on that on this channel that takes precedence as being actual news. So as far as we can tell, we were able to back it up. I would have to unfortunately disagree with you. We understand it to be a 100% correct NOTAM. From what I'm understanding, Matthew, that is from a official government website confirming that there will be that NOTAM zone.
Yeah, it's a legit 100%. We're not sure about the details on it, but it's a legit NOTAM.
But as far as what you're saying, I believe what you're trying to say, and this is how I would understand it, Roscosmos has no authority to issue a NOTAM for the Federal Aviation Administration. they have no control over the Federal Aviation Administration. So they send in the statement that they need this area closed off, and then the Federal Aviation Administration sends that forward to the folks who are flying in the area and give them the NOTAM. That's how I understand it would work. Maybe I'm wrong, because it sounds like you have more experience with it. But it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Roscosmos to have some kind of a jurisdiction over American airspace or American-controlled airspace and to begin to issue NOTAMs on its own without any approval from a U.S. Agency or organization that would control the airspaces. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, but I do thank you for support and throwing in your opinion on it, because it's still an interesting one. So with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we've got a super chat this time from Andy L, who threw in a $10 donation.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Andy, for that support. He said, just saying hi, and please take a live chat question. And also, by the way, Andy L, he sent me a picture of the long-range rifle he uses for his shooting. And my God, like, Andy L has a hell of a setup. The scope alone is freaking nuts. That's on that rifle he's got. It's crazy. It's a Vortex scope. And it is nuts. I think it's like $5,000 just for the scope alone. So that's more expensive than all of my guns combined, just in the scope. So he's dwarfing my collection a bit. And also, I don't even think the Enforcer has anything close to that either. So that's crazy. And also, I bet you. Not bet he can hit really long-range shots. He's hitting long-range shots, like you said yesterday. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, with a $5,000 scope, I could shoot the moon. Like, I'm telling you what, I didn't know he had that kind of kit. Could you send the picture of it forward to us so that way we could show it on stream?
It's on Twitter.
It's on the Twitter. Dang, I'm gonna have to take a look at this. Is it in a DM?
DM.
So I wouldn't be able to show that on air, but we could easily take a look. Oh my goodness, man. Oh my lord. So, wait a minute. That looks to me, let's see, so, Masterpiece on, for some reason, Andy, that looks a lot like a Remington 700 to me that has a really nice chassis. Doesn't it look like that to you, Matthew, a little bit?
Oh, no, that definitely does not.
What the hell, man, dude, a Remington 700 can look cool. I mean, what happened?
Again.
1 second, hang on.
No, that looks like well, it says it right there. It says Masterpiece Arms. It's an MPA.
Yeah, but when I saw it, I was like, it kind of looks like a Remington 700 a little bit. And let me see if I can find a really souped up Remington 700. Let's see. Let me just type in.
Now you got to show the picture on the stream now. Now you're getting everybody curious.
Well, hang on, Matthew. I got to show you this Remington 700. Like, I'm not saying crap to say it. You see where I'm kind of getting the idea from, though.
Yeah, somewhat. But I think I don't know. To me, there's a difference.
There is a space age difference, like in between the two. But I will show it to y'all. So here it is, right here. This is Andy L's rifle, target rifle. It shoots 6.5 Creedmoor. And it has a 26-inch barrel, which is huge. Like, I think one of the guns I have has a 21-inch barrel, and I think that's about the longest mine get. So 26 inches. I mean, we're talking massive. That's 2 feet and 2 inches of barrel length. That is huge. So let's see here.
I appreciate that you didn't skimp out on any of the parts either. Like, all the parts are legit. Even the bipod up front. All of it's like really good quality. Like, none of it's cheap. Well, like that crappy stuff that only lasts like a couple of months.
Dude, this rifle here, no expense spared. And also, let's see the scope. Where is?
Said it weighs 21 pounds too. So that's a heavy boy.
Wait a minute, how much?
21 pounds.
21 pounds. That's got to be. You probably have a heavy barrel in that thing, don't you? I would bet you that you put a heavy barrel in it, because usually people do that for accuracy. Is it glass bedded too, Andy L? Like, did you have this thing glass bedded? Because I've heard that apparently increases accuracy a great deal. But I never have had any of mine glass bedded. But I saw a fella one time when I was out shooting. He had an M14. And he had a Sikorsky scope on it, and he also had the thing glass bedded, and that man was he was driving tacks at 600 yards. It was all falling within, I think, like 0.5 MOA, which was about the best I'd ever seen at that point. And then you said you had 0.25 MOA, and I was like, oh my god. But still, I mean, everything. Oh, he did have a glass bedded, and he does have a heavy barrel as well. So Man, Andy Ella had this thing tricked out, man. He went into the play. He went into the gunsmiths or the armor. Oh, well, yeah, the gunsmiths, and he had "Pimp My Ride" playing in the background when he brought this thing in because this thing is kitted to the nines. I mean, this thing is crazy good. I would love to have a rifle like this. Oh wait, no, it's not glass bed. It's free float. Okay, well, dang, man, that's still impressive. Because I've heard that glass bedding improves accuracy greatly. You just got that thing free float. I mean, that is actually really crazy. That's crazy cool. But still, I gotta say, man, I feel honestly, Matthew, I feel like Corrales, back when we used to watch his videos back in the day, we're like, oh, the free float, inspiration. I'm like, oh man, this is cool. I could talk about this for a hot minute. But man, what a rifle. This thing is beautiful too. Huge congrats on having such an amazing looking rifle, Andy L. And sharing that with us and everyone else, because this is, oh man, nice. I love it. And so as it breaks my heart, I know, because the cost of this thing's got to be like, I would assume at least above 10 grand for this rifle right here, or a lot more than that. And someone said 6.5 is a bit weak. Man, get the hell out of here.
What the hell are they talking about?
It's a target round. I mean, like, some people have complained about the punching power of a 6.5 Creedmoor. Some people say the 308's a lot better for actual punching power. But 6.5 Creedmoor is entirely like a range kind of a round. It's just made for performance. That's it. It's not really made to, take down a deer or anything like that, or take down a person. I mean, it will. I mean, like, because I have to say this, everyone always says a bullet's a bit weak. Has any person in real life ever been designed to like get hit by a bullet and have one punch through them? Because I have a feeling most people aren't designed for that kind of thing. So I don't care if it's a 22 long rifle or a 50 BMG. Having a bullet enter your body is probably not good, whether it be a small bullet or a big bullet. But 6.5 Creedmoor is not that bad. I mean, 6.5, it's on up there. I mean, it's certainly bigger. I would say it punches greater than 5.56 for certain. Like no doubt about that. And people swear by 5.56. And also, Andy L said this thing could take out game up to 400 yards, which is a fairly considerable distance. But Andy L out here, he's hitting at 1,000 yards, so he would certainly hit the deer.
He's 1,000 yards. That's crazy. Also, I see Gunfox61 sending a picture of. I think he said a free float. Let's see here. What did he say? What did he say? He said, I sent you my centerpiece. I saw that on the Twitter DMs, by the way. It's on Mac Wolf. Mac Wolf up there on the picture. Very, very cool looking gun as well.
What is this thing? Like, what is this thing? Dude, this thing looks like a 50 BMG of some kind. I don't know what it would be, though.
He said 20 millimeter.
20 millimeter? Oh my God, it's an anti-tank rifle.
Yeah, for real. Damn.
Oh my God, dude! The 50,
crazy.
The 50 BMG, like the M82, is an anti-material rifle. This thing is literally an anti-tank rifle, and it even has
They don't call him the Gunfox for nothing.
Dude, Gunfox out here, he's preparing to fight the Russians and win. Like with this kind of gun, nothing can stop him. But it's an Osno 20. Oh, how much do those cost? I need to know. Osno 20 millimeter. Okay, so the first American anti-material rifle designed and marketed by Anzio Ironworks. So it's not even made by like a company called like Barrett Firearms. It's made by someone called the Anzio Ironworks. So this thing's industrial. But anyways, let's see. It's chambered in 20 millimeter Vulcan. How much are these things though? They're still being made in the present day. So where can you buy one of these things? So I found the website. $12,000. My
Damn,
God, you can buy a
son.
motorcycle for that. That is crazy.
Damn. And I bet this thing's heavy as hell.
Dude, I don't think you want to know, because here's a guy right here standing with one. It's like the size of a freaking alligator, dude.
Damn, man. That thing's bigger than I thought. Like, it doesn't look that big on the ground, but that thing's huge.
Oh, my goodness. It's 130 pounds. Jesus. Like,
Damn,
oh my God.
son. You can't even really carry that without like two people.
So look at this. These are the size comparisons. 223, 338 Lapua, 50 BMG, and then 20 millimeter Vulcan. You could shoot this. You could shoot this shit out of an M61 minigun or a Gatling gun on an F16. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Where the hell do you even shoot that? Like, where do you go to shoot this gun?
Ukraine, South Sudan.
Damn.
I mean, there's a lot of places you could shoot it, but I don't think Like, oh my, like I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I don't even think you could shoot this thing in America. Like, you know, like I think the ATF would be on your door if they heard this thing fire. But man, dude, nuts! Like, my God. So Danny said, "Damn, son, where'd you find this?" That's what I'm saying, and it's apparently from this website. Like, this is the website. So wait a minute, what? Hold up. Oh, they're sold out. I was about to be like, wait a minute.
You know when the website looks like this, that gun's about to be busting.
Man, that gun about to be hot. Wait a minute, a Lottie, dude. They sell Lotties on this website. No way.
Oh, they got limited quantities left. Oh, wait a minute. There's the prices. What was the price on it?
I think this is for the ammo. You can get a suppressor for a Lottie?
Oh,
No
crap,
way.
man. These people are wilding.
Man, one complete action left for $5,000. I mean, honestly, that's not bad. Like for a Lottie. I mean, I don't know how much Lotties go for though. But let's see. The 20 mil takedown.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
These people are making obscene weapons out here. I've never seen anything like this.
Dude.
Man, there's one mounted in the back of a pickup.
Dude, it's a technical. It's a freaking technical.
Oh my God, man. It's like an old Ford dually with a damn freaking huge gun mounted in the back.
Fifth wheel gooseneck pickup truck mounts available. Now, this is the America I live for. I'm telling you that. Like, it's a 338 Lapua. Now, this thing ain't a looker, but it certainly is a hitter. Like, that barrel right there has got to be the ultra heavy barrel. Which also, by the way, just to clarify this for folks who may or may not know a lot about shooting, the heavier the barrel, usually the more improved the accuracy is. So if you have like an ultra duty heavy barrel, the accuracy is probably sublime out of that rifle. But dude, oh my goodness. I've never... Wait, hang on. It's only 4,700 for this thing, which honestly, that's not bad. Like for a 338 Lapua, like with that kind of a barrel. Wait, you can get upgrades. What kind of upgrades do they sell? What the hell? Dude, this is the craziest website I've ever seen.
You know what's crazy is like they're sold out of most of the stuff, and it's not cheap. It's like people are like laying down some money on this stuff, like big money.
They have a 50 BMG suppressor.
Oh, wait a minute. Say it again.
A 50 BMG suppressor.
What the hell? They said they build to any caliber a custom suppressor.
I want it in 30 millimeters. I want a suppressor on my BMP now. Like, dude, this is crazy. I'll give Anzio Ironworks a massive shout out. They're the real ones. I've never seen a company as real as this. They're like, you want a machine gun mounted in the back of your truck? Bet. Like, they're like, you want anti-tank guns? Bet. Like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. Gunfox 61, you're introducing me to a new world. Like a new world out here. Impressive for sure. But with that, I hope that does address that well. That's probably one of the craziest and most hyped like rabbit holes I've ever gone down. And goodness. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much, Andy L, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for letting us go down such a wild rabbit hole. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in an $8 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support. He said, BC Skyman still needs bandages to send to Ukraine, and any NAFU LSA members here who can boost. Not cheap, but urgently needed. And we can do this, LSA.
And LSA! And I'm planning on helping out with a good bit of bandages of my own. I think Matthews have made it there. Have they made it there, Matthew?
Yes. They have been confirmed to have made it.
So I will be sending my load next. I think BC Skyman has gotten 350 bandages at the moment, and they're looking to try and have at least 1,000 to send over. I'll be able to help out with that a good bit. I'll put that up front. But if anyone could help out with getting more of those bandages, and I believe Matthew may be able to put the details of that in the chat again. I'm not really sure because I don't have it on me at the moment.
Is BC Skyman in here again?
I think he may still be in here. So BC Skyman, if you want to put the details of the exact kind of bandages you're looking for in the chat, please feel free to do so. And also get with anyone you would want to or anyone who's interested so that way they can get the bandages to you because I'm planning on sending some as well. And also, I would completely agree. If anyone does have the ability that's a part of the Leaf Spring Army to help out BC Skyman in getting these bandages, please feel more than free to reach out to BC Skyman, get the info, and mail those to him because it will be massively helping out Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines with those bandages. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Multi-Medium Arts, who puts in a 5. And this is a wild one. He says, do you think Cannibal Putler will use the meatpacking plant to make sausages out of all his discarded and left around soldiers?
In the Czech Republic, we love pork too. Ever had sausages? You know what, man? You know, I was like doing that for like a day. You're like, what are you doing that for? But beyond that, nah, I don't think so. He'd probably be using that to grind up shoyu after he completely removes him from the government. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have one from Siri, who put in a 5 and says, HYFR Enforcer Bros, you've created a community that gets along across divides, which is wild in 2024. And the 17th of May is Norwegian Independence Day. And XO from Norway, or excuse me, from Oslo.
Hey, huge shout out to you. Happy Independence Day to the Norwegians. Really cool, actually. And also, thank you so much for the support and saying that we've made a community that cross divides. It is really rare in the modern day to create a community like that. And I think it shows the limitless and mighty power of the Lee Spring Army to be able to do something like that. Because the Lee Spring Army is the only community on the internet that crosses really all divides and really just unites everyone under a common cause without nitpicking everything in between. And that is really something special. And I'm so happy to see that people have gotten to the point on this channel where it's not something that's foreign. It's something they expect. And they're actually, and I've seen a lot of people end up being displeased when they see folks in the live chat that are breaking those rules that have been laid out to make sure the Lee Spring Army continues to cross those thresholds and divides and unify people over a common cause. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Happy Norwegian Independence Day to you as well. And thank you so much once again for being here and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, BC's comment, if you can put your email back in the chat once again so that way I can add it to the pinned comment here, I will add it. And also, our next one here goes to Russia Nasia. Oh, goodness. And they put in a 5. They said, greeting from Malaysia. And the question, what is the difference between regular and Russian flu? They said the answer is you get sick from regular flu, but some Russian flu out the window.
Oh, that's a pretty good one. And hello to Malaysia. That's really cool. Also, fun fact, did y'all know that Singapore was actually a part of Malaysia until Malaysia decided that Singapore was really running the country almost entirely on its own, so they kicked them out? Like, did y'all know that? Like, that's actually kind of a cool fact. Let me see. Let me type this in. When did Malaysia kick Singapore out? That was in 1965. Singapore separated from Malaysia to become an independent and sovereign state. You know, that's wild to think about, man. Back in 1965, Malaysia just went, man, we tired of these people. And they said, bye-bye. And then they just kicked them out. It's like, that's crazy. Like, but anyways, beyond that, I have to say, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for being from Malaysia. We actually have never gotten the super chat from, or I believe even a comment in the chat from anyone who's openly said they're from Malaysia. So that is incredibly cool. And hello to you. I hope you're doing well. And also, let's see. Let's go look at Kuala Lumpur, or Lumpur, which I believe is how this is pronounced. And let's take a look around because I've always been interested. What does the capital of Malaysia look like? They got a nice waterfall. Wow, that's actually pretty nice. Dude, that's actually really nice. What is this? Is this like a scale model?
What in the world?
They got the Petronas Towers, which is one of the tallest towers in the world, by the way. And let's see here. What do they have here? I mean, this is actually a fairly nice place. Like, this is really nice, actually, from the pictures that they take. Look at that. Nice. I like it. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support. And helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Russia NAC actually is correct. Malaysia is the only country in the world to voluntarily throw a territory out, like in history. They're the only ones who went, okay, bye-bye, and then just kick someone out. Like, that's like, who in the world does that? Like, that, you know, Malaysia is a different kind of a mindset. They're on that grind set when they wake up because they're like, we don't live to take more land. We live to give away land. It's like, get out of here. And then, of course, then you got the Philippines, who are the only people in the world who fight MILF. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I was able to address that fairly well. Also, Mandy, reread that again just to make sure I addressed that all correctly.
It was that joke about the flu.
Oh, yeah. So we did address that correctly. And so with that, Thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you for putting in a joke that went hard. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Boy, who puts in a 5 and says Facebook Live preventing Erdogan's ouster / orderly coup. And he said rallying the Brotherhood to prevent their military from typical Turkey transfer of power.
Yeah, and Turkey really rarely, well, they do have presidential elections that go through and do fine and everything. But whenever back in the day anyone thought that a president was becoming a little bit too power hungry, the military would conduct a coup, throw them out, and then they'd allow an election to be held. And weirdly enough, Turkey's one of the few countries where a military coup would be held and they would actually let an election go forward. There was a time though in the 1970s when a coup happened and then the general ended up taking control of Turkey for a while, which was completely against the norm, and heavy oppression happened in Turkey during that time. But still, it is something interesting though. The Turkey's got a really weird way of how their government runs, especially in the modern day. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Fred Mathewson, who puts in a 5 and says, is it true that Blinken basically gave Ukraine the okay or the option to use U.S. weapons in Russian territory?
I haven't really heard that. I've heard rumors of that, but I haven't really seen that myself to confirm that. So I would have to say I don't think so. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, because I'm not really sure, because I did hear something along the lines of, he said, this is not really our concern to get in the way of how Ukraine fights the war. But I don't really know if he meant that about our weapons being used the way Ukraine wants, or if they're going to attack refineries with their own weapons. I'm not really sure on that. So I'd have to say I don't really think he said it that way, but maybe he did. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octavian Timursuranu, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Octavian. He says, for the channel, and please take a question from the LSA brothers and the sisters, and Slav Ukraine, Simplify.
Hey! And thank you so much once again for the support. And thank you so much once again, Octavian Timursuranu, for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running. And we will make sure to take a live chat. But before we do, Slava Ukraini, Herom Slava, and long live the Lee Spring Army. So what do we got for the live chat, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to DVN, who says, if the NOTAMs are within a U.S. airspace by accident due to whatever error of the Russian missiles, what do you think the U.S. response would be?
That would technically be a violation of our airspace. Currently, at the moment, I would expect that we probably just look the other way and completely ignore it, because that seems to be the way things are running right now. But if that's not the case, that is a technical breach of our airspace, and if people are killed, that could end up causing a massive diplomatic incident with the Russian Federation. So I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least the best I can right now, because it would be kind of hard to really extrapolate what we would do, because I'll be quite honest, the United States' reaction to things over the past few years have been kind of not what I've been expecting. I've usually expected their response will be a little bit more, I mean, not extremely harsh, but a little bit more harsh than what we've seen, and then they usually end up being pretty soft-handed. So I can't really tell you for certain, but that's what I would think would happen, is that there would be a major diplomatic incident about that if the object ended up colliding either with the ground inside of the airspace of the United States or in the territorial waters of the U.S. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, Octavian Timursuranu. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 4, actually, from Steve, who says, bi-directional flying wing on YouTube. Enough said.
Bi-directional flying wing on YouTube. Let's pull that up. A bi-directional flying wing. Hey, Pete. You ever seen the flying wing? Hey, Pete. Let's see here. Let's see. I don't know which one he's talking about, because when I typed in, and if I typed this in correctly, Matthew, bi-directional flying wing.
Bi-directional flying wing.
Bi-directional flying wing. Did I type that in correctly?
Yes.
I'm not really getting anything on it. Let's see here. I see some kind of a weird video made by a YouTube channel like Microsoft Flight Simulator using simple planes that says silent and efficient supersonic bidirectional flying wing. And then I see the DARPA oblique flying wing, which actually kind of looks a little cool. I can't tell if it's real. No, it's not real. That's a fake one as well. So sadly, I'd have to look into this a little bit more. But still interesting, I'd have to say. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to DVN303, who puts in a 5, and that is their first ever super chat, by the way. Huge thanks to you for supporting the channel. They said, thanks, LSA.
And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And LSA to yous. And thank you once again for your first support of this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
And our next one here goes to Francois, who puts in a 2, and says a Russian sub off the coast of Cali.
And Russian subs are off the coast of Cali, and they're also in the Gulf, and they're also off the East Coast, and they're also off the coast of Alaska. Russian subs are always everywhere. Just like our subs are also in the Baltic, in the Barents, in most likely the Mediterranean, also in the Sea of Okhotsk. The Sea of but beyond, and the Sea of Japan. Our submarines are always everywhere as well because it's a part of nuclear deterrent. The reason why I have to say it like that is because there is a certain YouTube channel out there who will go, "Oh my God, Russian submarine in the Gulf, everyone's about to die," and I'm like, nope. I'm like, no, that's not happening. But there are Russian submarines off the coast of California right now, and there are Russian submarines just south of us in the Gulf of Mexico. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is actually going to be moving us into the live chat segment. So once again, huge shout out to everyone for the support, and no cap. And the Morse code decoders of the night were Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, and David Millsaps. They said the Morse code decipher for today reads, Russian forces are already trying to run away from the Kharkiv front just days after it started, and LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and that's actually the same Morse code as last night, because I couldn't really come up with anything that was more descriptive than that. It really continued to be true today. But still, I gotta say, thank y'all for getting that Morse code message correct on the 813th day of war. Truly impressive that you'll continue to get that right day and day again, and time again, really, without fail. And also, I gotta thank y'all once again for really showing the Lee Spring Army that there are people in here who still have the art of being able to listen to and understand Morse code, which is incredibly cool. But with that, we're about to be moving on into the live chats. And to be quite honest with y'all, I'm feeling a little spent. So we're going to answer as many questions as we can up until 12:15 local time, which means for the next 7 minutes. And then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And this first one here is going to go to Chris Cooper, who says, did you hear that the Bayraktars are coming back to Ukraine? And do you know if it's true?
We have heard that. We've also heard that Baikar is planning on opening up a plant in Poland. So we have heard about that. It's just that, it's kind of in the early works. So we're not really reporting on it at the moment. But once it finally starts to make its way all the way around to being an actual thing and physically existing and, Bayraktars being sent to Ukraine in larger numbers, then we will start to cover it and then we'll backtrack and tell the story leading up to that. But that is true and it is good to hear. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Shalmanizer, who says, what does Russia have for manpads?
Russia has the Igla, which is a ugly thing. And let me see if I can pull that up here. Here we go, the 9K38 Igla, which entered service with the Soviet Union in 1981. Here it is, right here. It kind of looks like a Stinger. Really, all manpads look similar. But this is the missile that it fires right up here at the top. That's what an Igla missile looks like. So it literally pretty much is inside of the tube. There's really no extra space in the launching tube. And then, let's see here. It is... Oh, look, actually, this is an A-10 Thunderbolt after getting hit by an Igla. And so you can see the damage that was caused by one. And also, it got shot at during Operation Desert Storm. Kind of cool, when you really think about it. But anyways, also here's a rear view as well, showing you a little bit of the additional damage caused to the A-10 Warhawk. Kind of cool. But anyways, with that, that's their equivalent of the Stinger, is the Igla. I don't really think they have any more man-pads than the Igla. Let me make sure to double-check that, though. Russian man-pads. And what man-pad stands for is Man-Portable Air Defense System. And so the man is actually just man, but then PADS actually stands for Portable Air Defense System. But let's see here. They also apparently have the 9K333 Verba, which I don't think I've ever seen in Ukraine at this point, or a large amount of them. It literally looks like an Igla. There's like no difference in between the two, so I think this is just a marketing scam. And it also says right there, Mac it. So I think it is a marketing scam, but apparently they have another one that looks a lot like the Igla. And also, let's see here. Verba is originally developed as a replacement to the Igla, but look at this. And then look at this. And tell me, is there really a difference?
I don't really think so.
I don't think so either. I think this is literally a scam. Like, there's nothing different about the launching system and probably the missile inside of it either. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. They pretty much just have the Igla and that's it. And then a rip-off Igla. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Luigi, who says...
Luigi!
I don't know. I cracked myself up on that. They said, a question, my good sir. And yes, Luigi. He says, what, if any, effect will the Russians expelling the UK military attaché? And after that news came out a few weeks ago on the use of chemical weapons.
Use of chemical weapons appears to have absolutely no impact on the war in Ukraine. Everyone just said it and then went, oh, what a tragedy, and then everyone ignored it. In kicking out the military attaché, it's not really going to do anything. It just shows that there's a souring of diplomatic relations in between the Russians and the British, but it isn't really going to impact anything at all, to be quite honest. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jaya Turner, who says, Enforcer Matt, I just thought of this. Putin could have demoted Shoigu to remove him from the public eye so that he can be windowed on the down low. And do you think this is plausible, or am I tripping? and I don't think you're tripping.
Shoigu
I think it is. Yeah, Shoigu might be tripping right out the window that's open by accident. But seriously speaking, though, I think Shoigu was getting either a little bit rambunctious behind the scenes, or maybe there were some rumblings that something was happening that Shoigu might be a threat to Putin's power, and that's maybe the reason why Putin went ahead and got him out of the way. I still think that Shoigu's in danger, though. Maybe not necessarily the window immediately, but probably some unfortunate things are going to start happening to Shoigu right before the very end for him. Because usually Putin just doesn't let people walk away. It operates like a gang, and you don't get to leave it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say he's most likely being demoted to get killed, because that's really the only way it goes, or he's going to be put in prison and then killed. But he will eventually die at the hand of the Russian government. So I certainly would agree with you. I think that's the motive behind it, and that's what's happening. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And also, huge shout out to Tony Collins, who put in a 2-pound, by the way. He said, Enforcer, you gentlemen crack me up. A good show. And why don't you ever see Russian men's underwear? Because of Chernobyl fallout.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one. I like that one. Give it to Tony Collins. And I got to thank you for the support. Thank you for being one of our British viewers as well and enjoying the channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Stephen Walden, who says, Matt, is it true that Russia went from $2,000 a month to $11,000 a month for new recruits? And no, definitely not USD. I can tell you that for a fact. I don't think that sounds right to me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I haven't heard that. And also, most of them don't even get paid. So, like, if they up the pay, like, it's like they're upping the pay on pay you're not even making anyways. So I would say I haven't heard that, and if it is something they said, it's something they certainly probably didn't follow through on. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Michael Norman, who says, at what point would the Ukrainians have to order a civilian evacuation of Kharkiv if the battle goes sideways?
They would most likely order a civilian evacuation of Kharkiv by the time Russian forces started to make it into the village of most likely Cherkasy Tishki. They would probably start to order an evacuation. But then again, we have to remember that for a long time, the front line was at Ruska Lazova, right up here. And I believe we could actually still see a bit of the battle damage on the satellite view from that. Yeah, you can actually see a crater impact right there. You can, yeah, you know, they might not even evacuate until they made it onto the outer ring road of the E40, and then they'd start evacuations. But I would say at least near the village of Cherkasky, Tishki, we would probably see the first evacuations happening, and then they would start conducting complete evacuations by the time the Russians reached the ring road around Kharkiv. At least that's what I would be thinking, but I don't think the battle is ever going to go that south where we even have to worry about evacuations, and I pray that that's the case. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. Of course, I have to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor to be able to run the stream for 54,000 people since the stream started running, and a whopping 8.1 thousand people were here live at a single moment tonight. We are greatly appreciative of each and every one of y'all being here, and we are entirely honored that we get to be y'all's source of news every single day, for the most part, on the war in Ukraine. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks, and thank you once again for another great stream tonight. And it was also a fantastic night for Ukraine. They're still busy at work, and we'll cover all that tomorrow on the Short War Summary video, as well as the nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern once again. And with that, bye-bye for now.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards